Chapter 6:12. A thick aura of life spread. In an instant, everyone in the Yu family courtyard felt their bodies lighten and even their souls lightened. At the same time, their strength and bodily functions were slightly improved. The power of the law of life. In the courtyard, Lin Yi looked at Yu Daoming, who was younger than him and full of vigor. The corner of his mouth twitched. Lin Yi did not expect Yu Daoming to have mastered the power of the law of life. The law of life was one of the special laws, and it was many times stronger than ordinary laws. Sir Lin, you are indeed special. Yu Daoming chuckled. Only Sky Saints can come into contact with and comprehend the power of laws. You're only a saint, but you can activate the power of several laws and can even see the power of the law of life. This is truly shocking. Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but frown. Bill Yuo had told him that saints could comprehend the power of laws. How did Yu Daoming become a Sky Saint? The difference between a Sky Saint and a saint was like a chasm. Many people could not cross that chasm in their entire lives. With your talent, you should not be an ordinary person, Yu Daoming suddenly asked. Then may I ask why Sir Lin is helping the Yu family? Sir Lin, where are you from? Phew, since Senior has asked, I will not lie. Lin Yi sighed and said helplessly, my goal is to cause chaos in Sunset City and to protect Yu Menglin. Cause chaos in Sunset City, Yu Daoming narrowed his eyes. But the Yu family is weak. If we really cause chaos, perhaps the Yu family will be the first to bear the brunt of it. With me here, I will not let anything happen to Yu Menglin and the others. Lin Yi said in a low voice. Although I am selfish, I will not joke about their lives. If it wasn't for this, why would I call you here? Yu Daoming knew everything that had happened before. If not for Lin Yi protecting the Yu clan, Yu Daoming would not have let Lin Yi come here safely. Phew, if you're like this, it doesn't seem to benefit our Yu clan. Yu Daoming looked at Lin Yi with a smile. Noticing this, Lin Yi's mouth couldn't help but twitch as he cursed in his heart. Old fox. If he had known earlier, Lin Yi would not have said so much to Yu Daoming. With the help of Yu Menglin, he could have thrown Luori's city into chaos. At present, he had convinced Yu Daoming, but Yu Daoming was going to scheme for the Yu clan. In this way, he would be ostracized instead. After all, he was not a member of the Yu clan. No matter how much he had done for the Yu clan, Yu Daoming could not let the entire Yu clan stand against Sunset City for Lin Yi. Sunset City was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. After the Heavenly Treasures Pavilion, there were many hidden powers. Lin Yi sighed softly and said helplessly, if you agree, you will gain the friendship of Sibu Gakuin. Sibu Gakuin. Hearing this, Yu Daoming's pupils constricted as he stared at Lin Yi. His breathing quickened as his eyes flashed. Gulp. Swallowing, Yu Daoming said in a low voice, are you really a disciple of Sibu Gakuin? Other than Sibu Gakuin, have you seen anyone as talented as me and Senior Sister Shin? Lin Yi's lips curled slightly. That little girl is indeed gifted by the heavens. Yu Daoming's eyes darted around as he panicked. Even though he was a sky sage, he did not dare to let his guard down in front of Sibu Gakuin. Sibu Gakuin wants to attack Sunset City? Yu Daoming murmured. How can it be? Sunset City has existed for so long, and Sibu Gakuin has never done anything. Just because they didn't do anything in the past doesn't mean they won't do anything now. Lin Yi said indifferently. Furthermore, in the past few years, Sunset City has been getting closer and closer to the people of other powers. If we don't do something about it, I'm afraid some people will forget where they are. May I know which elder is leading the team? Yu Daoming suddenly asked. You'll know in a few days. Lin Yi laughed softly. How about it? Are you going to continue leading the Yu clan in cowardice? Or do you want to fight? Yu Daoming could not help but hesitate. Having lived in Sunset City for nearly 1,000 years, he had seen the people behind the scenes. He did not dare agree so easily. However, Sibu Gakuin was stronger. Strictly speaking, this area belonged to Sibu Gakuin. Even if Sunset City won this time, they would lose even more miserably next time. Even if the people behind them appeared, it wouldn't be of any help. The power of Sibu Gakuin was too terrifying. Rolling his eyes, Yu Daoming suddenly said, "Can you let me see the leader of your group?" "No." Lin Yi shook his head. "You don't have the right to see him with your strength. I admit that you are strong, but compared to him, then how can I believe you?" Yu Daoming frowned. "Sibu Gakuin, I won't lie to you." Lin Yi suddenly laughed. "If I wanted to harm the Yu clan, why would I wait until now?" "That's true." Yu Daoming nodded slightly and smiled. "If that's the case, then let's work together happily." "Let's work together happily." Lin Yi also smiled and let out a sigh of relief. No matter what, he had managed to calm Yu Daoming down. As long as the Yu clan did not get out of the car, they would still be on the same boat. The chaos in Sunset City could continue. After laughing, Lin Yi and Yu Daoming left the courtyard together. Outside the courtyard, Yu Menglin and the others, led by Yu Qianni, had been waiting for a long time. However, when Yu Menglin and the others saw Yu Daoming, who was as young as Lin Yi, they were stunned. What was going on? Didn't they say that there was another elder? Why was it a young man? "Elder." Yu Qianni hurriedly bowed while everyone was still in a daze. Hiss! In an instant, everyone was shocked and looked at Yu Daoming in surprise. Since when did the Yu clan have such a young elder? Hearing this, Yu Daoming's expression turned serious. He nodded slightly and glanced at Yu Menglin and the others. "Weak, really too weak." Looking at them, Yu Daoming frowned slightly and sighed. Previously, he had only occasionally paid attention and did not notice the aura of Yu Menglin and the others. Now that he looked at them, he was extremely disappointed. What they're practicing is actually an incomplete cultivation method. Too weak. Yu Daoming shook his head. Hearing this, Yu Menglin and the others smiled bitterly. The Yu clan's cultivation method has been stolen. There's no complete cultivation method left. How can they not be weak? Chapter 613. Don't you know how to get it back after being robbed? Yu Daoming shook his head and waved his right hand. In an instant, countless stars fell on the disciples. Wong. As the stars fell, Yu Menglin and the others shuddered. They felt as if the areas in their minds that they did not understand were suddenly cleared. All the bottlenecks in their cultivation techniques disappeared from their bodies. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, several auras surged. They had officially broken through. A sky saint is indeed powerful. Seeing this, Lin Yi could not help but sigh softly. Shen Qingyan glanced at Yu Daoming and walked to Lin Yi's side. She asked softly, "Junior brother Lin, who is he? Is he reliable?" "He is the ancestor of the Yu family. He will not abandon the family," Lin Yi said in a low voice. "He is a sky saint and should be stronger than elderly Moyun. Other than Elder Bai, the others might not be his match." "So powerful?" Shen Qingyan exclaimed. Her expression changed slightly as she looked at Yu Daoming. Although they had strength comparable to the great sage, there was still a huge gap between them and the Sky Saint realm. "Be careful." Lin Yi rolled his eyes and said in a low voice, "I feel that today's matter needs to be told to Elder Bai. With him joining us, we might be able to do even more. I will go back tonight and tell Elder Bai." Shen Qingyan nodded slightly. Not far away, Yu Daoming controlled the law of life to enter the bodies of the disciples and improve their meridians while listening to Lin Yi and Shen Qingyan's conversation. His strength far surpassed Lin Yi and Shen Qingyan's. No matter how Lin Yi and the others tried to prevent it, they could not stop it. Hearing Lin Yi and Shen Qingyan's words, Yu Daoming raised his eyebrows. He was shocked. Elder Bai, could it be that he is a flawless gentleman? Thinking of this, Yu Daoming's heart trembled. He was glad that he had made the right decision. Rumble. Everyone in the Yu family was breaking through. Their auras gathered together like a flood or a tsunami. It was incomparably strong. In an instant, the entire Luri city was shocked. Every faction was paying attention to the news of the Yu family. They could not believe that the Yu family, which was just like an ant, had turned the tables. Inside the heavenly treasure pavilion, Yin Shun clutched his abdomen with one hand, his face filled with pain. Sitting in front of him was a woman. Yu Qianni did not die. To the great sage? Yin Shun clenched his teeth and said, "Pavilion Master, if it wasn't for Yu Qianni, I would have annihilated the Yu clan today." The woman coldly glanced at Yin Shun and said, "Cancel the plan against the Yu family." "Why?" Yin Shun was taken aback. He hurriedly shouted, "Master, Yu Qianni can break through to the invincible saint level. This shows that the Yu family's secret really exists. As long as you take action and capture Yu Qianni, what do we have to fear?" "Idiot!" The woman waved her right sleeve. In an instant, a berserk energy suddenly surged and swatted Yin Shun away like a fly. Pooh! As soon as he landed, Yin Shun's body twitched. He could not help but cough up a mouthful of blood. He looked at the woman with eyes full of fear. "You family." Rich life energy rippled. Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun hesitated for a moment, then also began to cultivate. The law of life was very special. It had many benefits for people. Even the two of them did not want to miss it. 6 hours later, the law of life gradually dissipated. Everyone in the Yu family had broken through, including Yu Hongruei and the others. Their strength had greatly improved, especially Yu Hongruei, who had broken through to the early Great Sage level. This made him very excited. However, when he thought about how Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun could easily defeat the Great Sage level, he felt much better. This time, the Yu family had 3 invincible saints, 6 peak saints, more than 100 late-stage saints, and more than 50 middle-stage saints. Compared to before, it was like heaven and earth had been turned upside down. However, the excited crowd did not realize that the 6th elder had quietly left the Yu family. After doing all this, Yu Daoming, who was a Sky Saint expert, was much paler. The energy in his body had dried up. "Greetings, Ancestor! Greetings, Ancestor!" Suddenly, Yu Menglin and the others noticed Yu Daoming's weakness. They all knelt down to pay their respects. Yu Daoming's methods were unpredictable. They were completely convinced. As for their previous doubts, they had thrown them out of the window. Ahem! Yu Daoming coughed lightly. He waved at Yu Menglin and the others, indicating for them to go over. The other disciples and guards left tactfully. After a while, only Lin Yi, Yu Daoming, and Yu Qianni were left in the courtyard. "Actually, I've been paying attention to you guys for a long time." Glancing at them, Yu Daoming said softly, "You guys have done well during this period. Don't worry, I won't fight for power with you guys. You can discuss with Brother Lin if you have anything. If there's a problem that you can't solve, ask Tianni to call me." "Ancestor, you're still going into seclusion?" Hearing that, Yu Qianni could not help but exclaim. He frowned and looked at Yu Daoming with reluctance. "Of course not," Yu Daoming said in a low voice. "I'm going to find my Dao again. I won't go into seclusion again." "Then why aren't you in charge of the Yu family, Ancestor?" Yu Menglin, Yu Hongruei, and the others asked curiously. "If you're willing to take charge of the Yu family will definitely soar. I'm already old. In terms of decision-making, it's better for you guys to be young." Yu Daoming turned to look at Lin Yi and chuckled. "Brother Lin, I'll leave the Yu family to you. When this matter is over, I'll definitely repay you handsomely." As soon as he finished speaking, Yu Daoming waved his hands, and his figure immediately turned illusory. "Ancestor! Ancestor!" Yu Menglin and the others exclaimed. Just as they were about to reach out to grab that figure, Yu Daoming's figure had already completely disappeared from everyone's sight. "Lord Lin, what should we do next?" Yu Qianni blinked and turned to look at Lin Yi. As soon as he finished speaking, the others reacted. Before Yu Daoming left, he had entrusted them all to Lin Yi. In the next few days, disperse the people and send them out to spread the news. In 2 days, when the auction begins, you guys will listen to my orders. Rubbing his nose, Lin Yi revealed a devilish smile. "Next, I'm going to overturn the entire Sunset City." Overturn the entire Sunset City. Hearing this, Yu Menglin and the others looked at each other. Their eyes were burning with passion. If Sunset City was overthrown, then the Yu clan would be the biggest beneficiary. Chapter 614. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. In these 2 days, the Yu clan, led by Yu Qianni, Yu Menglin, Shi Wei, Shuefeng, and the rest secretly investigated the other forces and spread the false news of the Yu clan. This way, the forces that wanted to attack the Yu clan were confused when they heard the different versions of the news. They did not dare to act rashly as they were not sure of the Yu clan's strength. In addition, the auction was about to begin, and they could not afford to spend too much effort on other things at this juncture. Therefore, the Yu clan had a very peaceful time these 2 days. Although Yu Daoming did not make a move, he secretly changed the environment of the Yu clan. He also got Lin Yi and Shun Xingyun to set up a qi gathering formation and filled the entire Yu clan with the power of the law of life. This way, the Yu clan's cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. Although they did not make another breakthrough, their control of power, as well as the condensation of their physique and saint power, had improved. Lin Yi and Shun Xingyun returned to the secret base of Cebu Gakuan. Time was of the essence, and the sudden appearance of Yu Daoming was too powerful for them to handle. Therefore, they did not have time to do anything else and had to discuss with Flawless White first. When Lin Yi and Yu Qianni returned, Flawless White had been waiting for them for a long time. "How was it, you two little guys?" Bai Wuxia chuckled. "I thought that you would wait until the auction officially begins tomorrow before coming back." Ahem. Lin Yi coughed awkwardly and hurriedly told him everything that had happened in the Yu clan. Flawless White's expression changed slightly when he heard this. "Interesting. There's actually a sky saint hidden in Sunset City. I wonder what level of sky saint he is." Lin Yin muttered to himself. Flawless White rubbed his chin and looked at Lin Yi. He smiled. "Little guy, what do you suggest? I feel that I can borrow his power." Lin Yi said in a low voice, "Even the Yu family has a heavenly saint. Obviously, the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion and other forces should also have experts of this level. With him around, he can help us share some of the pressure." Indeed, Flawless White grinned and said, "From what I know, the Celestial Treasure Pavilion already has 6 Heavenly Saint experts." "What? 6 Heavenly Saints?" Hearing this, Lin Yi and Shun Xingyun both exclaimed in surprise. They looked at each other, their eyes full of surprise. In their minds, the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion was already strong enough to have 2 Heavenly Saints. The sudden appearance of 6 Heavenly Saints really shocked them. "Hiss, it can't be?" Lin Yi frowned slightly and said in confusion, "According to what Yu Daoming said, the Celestial Treasure Pavilion is not very powerful. At most, they have 1 or 2 Heavenly Saints. How can there be so many?" The Celestial Treasure Pavilion is not very powerful, but the forces behind them are not weak. Flawless White shrugged and said helplessly, "It's because I know that they sent 5 Heavenly Saints and that guy from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion that I chose to come personally. The others are too violent. With so many Heavenly Saints, if they fight, this city might be destroyed. So I came to mediate," Flawless White said with a smile. Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun's mouths twitched violently. "If you can mediate, then there's really something fishy going on. Well, if you kill them all, it's also considered mediating." "Oh," Lin Yi touched his nose and said in a low voice, "If the Celestial Treasure Pavilion sent 5 Heavenly Saints, then what about the other forces behind them? Will they send people as well?" In Sunset City, other than the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, the other forces don't have any backers. More accurately, the backers they found were all destroyed by the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Flawless White said softly, "So, you don't have to worry about the other forces. Apart from the strength they show on the surface, they really don't have anything else to hide. At most, each force will have 1 or 2 great Sage Realm cultivators. To us, they're not a threat. If they were a threat, I'm afraid they wouldn't have existed in Sunset City." Lin Yi shrugged and suddenly smiled. "If that's the case, then I'm relieved. With you Daoming, an elderly blocking one, the rest shouldn't be a match for you, Elder Bai, right? You're that confident in me." Flawless White laughed. "All right, hurry up and tell me your plan. I plan to have you Daoming and you Qianni raid the other forces' houses tomorrow." Lin Yi said in a low voice. "If it's possible, can Elderly go with them? If 2 Heavenly Saints attack together, it'll be faster and safer." Hiss, hearing this, Flawless White's expression changed slightly. He looked Lin Yi up and down and said in surprise, "You're pretty good, kid. How did you come up with the idea of destroying their old home? When the auction starts, everyone will go. Those skies saints will be guarding here, so the other forces' houses will be defenseless. However, this way, the Yu clan will become the target of public criticism. What will happen to the Yu clan then? Just you Daoming alone isn't enough to deal with so many forces." At this point, Flawless White narrowed his eyes and stared at Lin Yi. He wanted to know how Lin Yi would solve this problem. "It's very simple." Lin Yi grinned and said, "I've already arranged for people to investigate the various forces' martial skills and clothes. I've also asked Sherway to prepare. Tomorrow, they will wear different clothes and use different martial skills and weapons to attack. This way, those forces will be suspicious of each other. At that time, they won't be able to solve their own problems, let alone us, even the Yu clan." This plan, Flawless White rolled his eyes and suddenly smiled. "Okay, I've passed. I'll talk to Li Moyin later and ask him to cooperate with you. However, are you sure that Sherway could do all this well?" At this point, Flawless White raised his eyebrows and looked at Lin Yi. Hearing this, Lin Yi frowned. He suddenly remembered how Sherway had left with his tail between his legs last time. His mouth twitched as he looked at Flawless White in surprise. "Elder Bai, did you attack Sherway last time?" "No, I didn't," Flawless White said indifferently. "His martial skill is rather unique. It's also rather peculiar. So, I asked him some questions. If you trust him, then trust him well." After saying that, Flawless White laughed and turned to leave, leaving Lin Yi and Shun Qingyan behind. Chapter 615. Time passed, but Lin Yi and Flawless White did not stop working. They kept planning and arranging things. Li Moyin had also gone all out to take in Shi Tian as his disciple. He had gone to find Sherway and was willing to help him. Flawless White had not expected this. He had originally wanted Li Moyin to reject him directly so that he could reject Lin Yi on the grounds that he could not force the elders to do things. After all, he did not trust Sherway. However, Flawless White had never expected that Li Moyin would take a fancy to Sherway's son. Therefore, he did not hate Sherway. Instead, he tried to curry favor with him. This mission was a good opportunity for him to display his strength. How could he miss it? Sherway, Shui Feng, and Li Moyin worked together with the Yu family to set up an inescapable trap. Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and Peng Tianyu followed Flawless White to the auction. The auction of the Sunset City was not held in the city. Instead, it was held outside the city jointly by the various forces of the two True Dominion. The Sky Treasure Pavilion and the 9 Nether Heavenly Domains Heavenly Demon Sect were the most important. Flawless White did not use his full strength to hide his strength. He took his time to lead Lin Yi and the others to the auction. When they arrived, the crowd was like a tide, squeezing together. It was a spectacular sight. Tens of thousands of people had come to participate in the auction. Many of them were from the 9 Nether Heavenly Domain, as well as disciples from other regions. It was obvious that this auction was very famous. Saints were everywhere, and there were many great sage cultivators. There are also many peak stage great sage cultivators. Their sage aura surged like thunder around them. Under their feet, the sea of sand surged. The scorching heat stimulated everyone's blood. There doesn't seem to be an auction here. Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the others landed on the sea of sand. They looked around in surprise and frowned as they looked at Flawless White in confusion. "That's right, Elder Bai. There's only sand here. How can we hold an auction?" Shun Qingyun and the others were very curious. Just as they asked, someone laughed loudly. Turning his head, he saw several cultivators holding long swords chuckling. "The sand under your feet is the auction." Hearing this, Lin Yi and the others were slightly surprised. They lowered their heads and looked carefully. The auction house is actually buried under the sand? Startled, Lin Yi was just about to lean over to investigate when he heard a clear and violent cry. Screech. In an instant, powerful sound waves spread out and rippled out. Lin Yi shook his head violently and raised his head to look. He saw a huge five-headed strange bird flying over from the distance. Each head had a different color, and the hair on its body was bald. It looked rather strange. The five-spirit bird is here. Ah, the sky demon sex people are here. Only the celestial treasure pavilion is left. Seeing the strange bird, the crowd below was wild with joy. This caused Lin Yi and the others to be incomparably astonished. Could it be that there was some kind of treasure on top of that huge bird? At this point, Lin Yi and the others stared at the five-spirit bird. However, when they got closer, Lin Yi and the others could see clearly that there was no treasure on the five-spirit bird. There were only a dozen figures standing on it. The dozen figures all had the aura of the great sage realm. In particular, the leader was even more terrifying. His surging sane aura was like a monstrous wave. Screech! As the violent cry faded, the five-spirit bird hovered in the air. Every time it flapped its wings, the sand in the air was blown away. On the five-spirit bird, the dozen figures glanced at the crowd, but closed their eyes to rest. They did not even come down, let alone look at the many people participating in the auction below. The Sky Demon sect and the Celestial Treasure Pavilion were considered the direct descendants of the auction. They could not participate in the auction. Naturally, they were not willing to mingle with the people participating in the auction. Buzz, buzz, buzz. All of a sudden, another series of strange noises rang out. Immediately, a gust of wind rose. Lin Yi and the others turned to look and saw a flying shuttle rushing toward them at an extremely fast speed. Rumble. The flying shuttle passed through space, bringing with it bursts of sound waves. There were also a dozen figures sitting on it. However, their strength was much weaker than that of the Sky Demon sect. Other than the two great Sage Realm cultivators, the others were all invincible saints. They could not be compared to the Sky Demon sect at all. In fact, even the strongest among them wouldn't be able to stand out among the heavenly demon sect disciples. Swoosh! The flying shuttle was extremely fast. The moment the crowd saw it, it had already appeared in front of them and was floating in the air. Sky Demon sect, you're quite early. On the flying shuttle, the leader smiled and took the initiative to cup his fists in a friendly manner. Humph! However, the Sky Demon sect people on the five-spirit bird did not appreciate it at all. They immediately shouted coldly, "All right, since everyone is here, let's open the auction quickly." Cough, cough. Hearing this, the leader of the Sky Treasure Pavilion was enraged. However, he knew that he was definitely no match for those people. He could only grit his teeth and swallow his anger. Open the auction. When Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun heard this, they both lowered their heads and looked at the crazily flowing sand. Hiss! As expected, the auction is under the sand. Interesting, this is the first time I've seen an auction held under the sand. Lin Yi, Peng Tianyu, and Shun Qingyun looked at each other and smiled. However, they did not realize that Flawless White was looking at them with a smile in his eyes. Beside them, some people were laughing so hard that their stomachs were cramping. They were just trying hard not to make a sound. Screech! The five-spirit bird suddenly flapped its wings. In an instant, a gust of wind whistled and passed through everyone's bodies. Hiss! Suddenly feeling the gust of wind, Lin Yi and the rest were shocked and quickly tried to resist it. However, when the gust of wind passed through their bodies, they were shocked to realize that the gust of wind had no effect on them. They could not even feel the flow of the wind. This scene shocked Lin Yi and the others to the core. Hiss! What's going on? We can clearly see the wind. Why can't we feel it? Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the rest reached out their hands to grab it. However, the wind directly passed through their bodies. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The gust of wind had no effect on Lin Yi and the rest. However, it blew the sea of sand under their feet. Whistling sounds could be heard continuously as the gust of wind swept past. In the next moment, the sea of sand in the sky boiled and was driven by the gust of wind, spiraling and rolling in the air. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sea of sand surged. In just an instant, Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the others were surrounded by a sea of sand. It was boundless and boundless. Chapter 6:16. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sand surged and wrapped around the crowd, but it did not affect them at all. Among the crowd, those who were participating in the auction for the first time were all incomparably astonished and doubtfully sizing up their surroundings. Clang! Suddenly, the sound of a bell rang, lingering in the crowd's ears. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and looked in the direction of the bell. His eyes were filled with confusion. He could feel that there were several types of power of law in the bell sound, which made him feel very strange. When he looked over, he saw that the people from a heavenly treasure pavilion and the sky demon sect had each taken out a small bell and started to ring, causing the bell to ring. Clang! Clang! The bell sound reverberated, and the power of law in it quietly condensed the sea of sand in the sky, nurturing a special power. This is... Lin Yi shook his head violently and looked at the two small bells in a daze. His face was full of surprise. This was the first time he had seen a treasure that contained the power of law. That is a special spiritual treasure. Its power is not as strong as a supreme sacred weapon or even a 10,000 inscription sacred weapon. It just has a special effect. Billy Yuo's voice sounded in his mind. Previously, I thought that we had to open up a space to hold the auction. Now it seemed that I was thinking too much. It's just using the power of law to recreate the scene from 10,000 years ago. Recreate the scene from 10,000 years ago? Hearing this, Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. Suddenly, the crowd's exclamations rang in his ears. He looked over and realized that the sand in the sky had transformed into a huge palace with the help of the power of law. Buzz! The palace was magnificent and shone with golden light. Bathed in the sunlight, it was dazzling. The power of law rippled and flowed into the palace. Hiss! Gosh, what kind of technique is this? A palace appeared out of thin air. It's so beautiful. This palace was definitely built by a heavenly man. The crowd continued to exclaim in admiration. Even those who had been to the auction before could not stop praising. Huh! The people from the Sky Treasure Pavilion and the Sky Demon sect shouted and threw out the two small bells. Their saint power surged and surrounded the small bells. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the next moment, the two small bells began to spin on their own. The ringing of the bells became more and more urgent and loud. The power of the laws also continued to spread out. Creak, 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 as the small bell spun and the power of laws poured into it. The doors of the palace slowly opened. The auction has begun. Once you enter, you won't be able to leave. Now let's begin. Suddenly, a cold and lifeless voice rang out. The door opened and shone brightly. Swish, swish. Countless figures soared into the sky and dashed into the entrance. Go! Those from the Sky Demon sect shouted and charged in, ignoring the disciples of the other sections. For a moment, the crowd surged. Peng Tianyu, Cheng Yang, and the others were also eager to give it a try. They all had first-rank clans behind them, so they did not lack Saint Stones. Being able to participate in such a high-level auction would also bring them many benefits. However, Flawless White, Lin Yi, and the others were at ease, so they were too embarrassed to follow them. After a while, most of the forces had entered. However, some of the forces in Sunset City began to hesitate. The leaders of the various forces felt their hearts beat faster as a strange feeling rose in their hearts. This made them very surprised, as they did not understand what was going on. However, after a moment of hesitation, they gritted their teeth and led the crowd into the palace. The auction was held once every 10 years. It was a rare opportunity, and they did not want to miss it. Only one of the forces dismissed some of their subordinates before entering the palace. When most of the people had entered, Flawless White stood up calmly and led Lin Yi and the others into the sky. Peng Tianyu, Liao Zhengyu, and the others pursed their lips. They felt helpless. What would they do if they could not get a good seat after entering so late? However, when they entered the door, a dazzling light flashed in front of them, causing them to close their eyes. Welcome, esteemed guests, to the legendary auction. The entrance fee is 10,000 Saint Stones per person. A cold voice sounded. Lin Yi, Peng Tianyu, and the others were shocked. They did not expect that there would be an artifact spirit guarding the auction, and that there would be an entrance fee. Not only was there an entrance fee, but the price was as high as 10,000 saint stones. Many saints could not afford such a price. Only peak saints, like the great sage, could afford it without any burden. Not bad. We're in luck this time. It's actually a legendary auction. Flawless White's voice sounded. VIP room 003, open. Character scan. As his voice fell, Lin Yi and the rest did not even have the time to be surprised when they felt a ray of light sweep past them. In the next instant, they felt their bodies suddenly stop. When they opened their eyes again, they had already appeared in a resplendent room. Luminous pearls, jades, and emeralds were arranged on the walls in an orderly manner, but there was a special beauty to it. There were also spiritual weapons, spiritual fruits, spiritual gathering formations, and so on. Peng Tianyu and the others were dazzled, and they cried out in surprise. They had attended many great sage auctions before, but none of them were as grand as today's. Flawless White sat on a futon calmly and snapped his fingers. In the next moment, the luminous pearls on the walls flickered, forming a light screen. On the light screen, the scene outside the auction was displayed. Close to 10,000 cultivators only took up 1/10 of the space in the hall, making it look rather spacious. There was no one on the high platform. There were only a few tables, and each table was arranged according to a number. Elderbai, what exactly is the level of this auction? Peng Tianyu, Liao Jingyu, and Chengyang were shocked and could not help but ask. It's a legendary level auction, specifically for Great Sage and Heavenly Sage. Flawless White said calmly, "Come and sit here. This futon is good stuff. It can increase your understanding of territory power. There's also a weak power of the order inside. If you're fated, it can let you come in contact with the existence of the order in advance. As for this auction, you don't have to ask too much. Just watch quietly. It can increase one's territory power." Hearing this, Peng Tianyu and the others were overjoyed. They were no longer curious about the auction, and they all sat down. As soon as they sat down, joy appeared on their faces, and they felt the territory power to their heart's content. Lin Yi and Shun Xingyin's mouths twitched, and they also sat down. They turned their heads to look at the light screen, waiting for the auction to begin. They were sure that there were surprises waiting for them in this auction. As for the secrets of this auction, it was none of their business. Chapter 617. Dong. The bell rang again. It was long and deep, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. When they looked up, they saw a milky white light shining down. A figure appeared on the high platform. When everyone looked up, they were shocked beyond words. That figure was the man from Sky Monster Sect who had led the group earlier. However, he was in a daze, and there was a strange silver light in his eyes. The auction officially begins. The rules are as follows. No one is allowed to cause trouble. No one is allowed to leave halfway. And no one is allowed to bid more than the number of saint stones they have. Every bid cannot be lower than 10% of the starting price. Now, let's begin the auction of the first item. A cold voice came from the figure. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Only then did they realize that the figure had been possessed by the spirit in the palace. Wang. As soon as he finished speaking, the first box opened, and a long saber floated out. Beep, beep, beep. As soon as the long saber appeared, it lit up with raging flames. The heat from the saber shocked everyone. Supreme grade, 10,000 inscriptions, sacred weapon, roaring flame saber. The saber comes with an upper sage class cultivation technique, roaring flame saber skill. The starting price is 100,000 saint stones. Oh my god! The first item is a supreme grade, 10,000 inscriptions, sacred weapon. This, as expected of a prestigious auction. I'm looking forward to the next items. As the roaring flame saber appeared, the crowd could not help but clamor with different expressions. Even the great sage might not have a supreme grade, 10,000 inscriptions, sacred weapon. Those who came to participate in the auction were mostly peak sages and the great sage. Therefore, they all started to fight over it. In less than half an hour, The price of the Roaring Flame Saber had risen to 1,800,000 saint stones. Even at this point, not many people gave up. They continued to raise the price. This kind of crazy scene also frightened Peng Tianyu and the others. Hiss, are these guys crazy? It's just a supreme grade 10,000 inscriptions sacred weapon. Even if it comes with a cultivation technique, it's worth at most 2 million saint stones. How long has it been? Cheng Yang and the rest frowned as they started to examine their storage rings. Each of them had close to 10 million saint stones on them. Originally, they thought that they could buy more treasures, but now it seemed that it was already not easy to obtain 1 or 2 treasures. This was only the first treasure, but the price had already exceeded 2 million. One could imagine the price of the subsequent items. If it weren't for the fact that they often attended auctions and knew that the first item wouldn't be too weak as an appetizer and that the subsequent items might not necessarily be more expensive than this, they would probably have already left. It was too much of a scam. He couldn't afford it. The price was still rising. Soon, it reached the price of 6 million. At this time, everyone calmed down and stopped fighting. A supreme grade 10,000 inscriptions sacred artifact was worth more than 2 million at most. Even with a cultivation technique, it was not worth more than 3 million. 2,600,000 going once, going twice, third time deal. As soon as he finished speaking, the Roaring Flame Saber flashed and disappeared from everyone's sight. No one knew where it went. At the same time, on the platform, the second box popped open. This time, it was a book that shone with a faint black light. Supreme grade Saint Body Movement Technique, Vanishing Shadow Change. The starting price is 500,000 saint stones. Body Movement Technique? Tisk, there's such an obscure technique, and it's even a supreme grade saint technique. I must get it. This time, the Vanishing Shadow Change was even more popular. In less than 15 minutes, the price had increased to 7 million saint stones. After reaching this price, the rate of increase slowed down slightly. Finally, it stabilized at 35 million saint stones. The third item was a young beast, the sky-devouring python. If it grew up, its strength would be comparable to a peak great sage. It was extremely powerful. In an instant, all the major forces participated in the bidding. The price quickly soared to 6 million saint stones. Many scattered people were defeated and didn't dare to compete anymore. Some of the weaker forces also couldn't continue to compete. They could only watch with envy. In the end, the sky-devouring python was sold for 8 million saint stones. The fourth item was a slave. She was of mixed human and beast blood. She was extremely beautiful and had a voluptuous figure. Her strength was also quite strong. She was at the peak great sage realm. In the end, she was sold for 9 million saint stones. In room 003, Peng Tianyu, Cheng Yang, and the others were pale. Their foreheads were covered in cold sweat. If the subsequent items were sold for higher prices, they might not even be able to get a single treasure if they didn't make a move. Fortunately, the fifth item allowed them to heave a sigh of relief. An intermediate fist technique manual was sold for 7 million saint stones. The sixth item was a flying demonic beast, the purple lightning eagle. Although it had the strength of an invincible saint, its speed was faster than an ordinary great sage. The price was more than 3 million saint stones. After auctioning off so many items, Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun were bored. They yawned and began to cultivate. With their strength, these ordinary saint-grade items were nothing to them, unless it was a supreme sacred weapon. As for Flawless White, he had already fallen asleep. Even his breathing had stabilized. However, just as Lin Yi was about to cultivate, Billy Yuo exclaimed in his mind, "Lin Yi, you must get the next item." Suddenly awakened, Lin Yi raised his head to look, only to see a branch floating on the high platform. 7 brightly colored flowers bloomed on the branch, rippling with different energy waves. 1 leaf, 7 flowers, an ultimate saint-grade spiritual medicine. It has a strong effect on strengthening one's soul and divine sense. If you add this medicine in the process of refining the supreme sacred pill, 7 lives pill, After swallowing the 7 lives pill, there's a chance that you will have 7 lives. What? TSK, are you lying to us? 7 lives? How can we die then? How is that possible? How can there be such a heaven-defying pill? As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd in the auction house was in an uproar. They could not believe that there was a pill in the world that could give one 7 lives. After breaking through to the great sage grade, one would have many life-saving methods. Normally, one would only be defeated, but it would be difficult for one to die. Unless one encountered terrifying existences, such as the heavenly tribulation or lightning tribulation, one would have to be several levels higher than them in order to kill them. Coupled with the 7 lives pill, wouldn't that make one immortal? They were not the only ones. Even Flawless White was awakened. He muttered, 7 lives pill. TSK, it's easy to say. Among the herbs used to refine the 7 lives pill, 1 leaf 7 flowers is the easiest to obtain. Hearing this, Lin Yi and the others' mouths twitched. Their expressions immediately relaxed. It seemed that although the 7 lives pill existed, it was not easy to refine it. However, Lin Yi was determined to get the 1 leaf 7 flowers. Chapter 618. The 1 leaf 7 flowers was not as simple as a peerless spiritual medicine. If it was nurtured by the origin source heavenly water, there was a chance that it could be nurtured into the law of life. Lin Yi was already a saint, and his territory power had broken through the shackles. The more he came into contact with the law of life, the stronger his affinity with the law of life. There were 3 stages to the law of life: contact, enlightenment, and soul fusion. After contact with the law of life would have an affinity with you. The more contact you had with the law of life, the stronger your affinity with the law of life would be. This way, every time you use the power of heaven and earth with the support of the law of life, your power would be stronger. The higher your affinity with the law of life, the stronger the support. Enlightenment meant that you could use the law of life. At that time, you would be able to activate the law of life with just a wave of your hand. Soul fusion meant that you would be able to completely merge the law of life with your body. Not only would you be able to use the law of life, but you would also be able to turn your blood, meridians, soul, and saint power into the law of life. Therefore, the 1 leaf 7 flowers was very important to Lin Yi. Not only would it allow him to comprehend the law of life, but it would also allow him to recover his soul power and stabilize Biluo's condition. In the future, if he could find a formula for the 7 heart pill, he might be able to refine some supreme sage pills. That's right, the 1 leaf 7 flowers was not just one ingredient for the supreme sage pills. Silence. Just as everyone was discussing the 1 leaf 7 flowers, a cold voice rang out. A force as heavy as a mountain suddenly pressed down. In an instant, everyone's faces changed drastically, and the noise stopped abruptly. Fear filled their hearts as they looked at the figure on the high platform. Their eyes were filled with shock. Of course, Lin Yi and the others in the VIP room did not feel the pressure. Also, even if you don't find the 7 lives pill, the 1 leaf 7 flowers can be used to refine the 7 soul pill. After consuming it, you can split your soul into 7 parts, and each part of your soul will have 100% power. Legendary item. This is definitely a legendary item. Oh my God, is this spiritual medicine really just a sage spiritual medicine? Hearing this effect, everyone was greatly shocked. However, due to the pressure of the strong saint aura from before, they didn't dare to make a ruckus anymore. They just kept swallowing their saliva. They understood that such a powerful item was not something they could fight for. If this was a place like a ruin, it would be fine. They could rob it with their strength. If they were lucky, it would be even easier. However, this was an auction. If they wanted to compete for something, they could only rely on their own wealth. If one did not have sufficient wealth, one would not be able to break the rules of an auction, even if one was a heavenly saint. The starting price is 5 million gold coins. Hiss! As expected, this price is definitely not something that we rogue cultivators can afford. Hearing this price, the majority of the people revealed bitter smiles. The effects of one leaf, seven flowers were very strong, and they were very tempted when they heard about it. However, to them, the price was too expensive. They were not willing to spend so many saint stones just to obtain a single medicinal herb. If he swallowed it directly, its effects would only be that of a saint medicine worth 1,000,000 saint stones, or even worse. Not to mention them. Even some of the leaders of the major factions could not help but twitch their mouths when they heard the price. To them, something like one leaf, seven flowers was not practical. For a moment, the entire auction house was silent. No one made a bid, and they were all staring blankly at the one leaf, seven flowers. Fortunately, the auctioneer on the stage had lost his mind. Otherwise, it would have been extremely awkward. Drip, time passed slowly. Very quickly, 15 minutes had passed, and still, no one made a bid. In the VIP room, Lin Yi could not help but be surprised. Originally, he thought that the one leaf, seven flowers would be snatched up, and he would have to pay a heavy price. He did not expect that no one would make a bid. That's strange. That guy mentioned a lot of the effects of one leaf, seven flowers. Why is no one making a bid? While he was hesitating, a cold voice suddenly sounded. 15 minutes has passed. No one has made a bid. One leaf, seven flowers. Suddenly hearing this voice, Lin Ye's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly shouted, "I'll bid 5,500,000. Each bid could not be lower than 10% of the starting price. It was exactly 500,000. The cold voice stopped abruptly and changed its tone. 5,500,000 going once. 6 million. At this time, with Lin Yi taking the lead, a few powerful experts who majored in the soul also made a bid. 6,500,000, 7 million. 7,500,000. The price gradually increased. Lin Ye's mouth could not help but twitch. Damn it, when I didn't make a bid, no one came out. When I made a bid, all of you increased the price. What is the meaning of this? Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi immediately shouted, 10 million. In a split second, the entire auction house became silent. Everyone was looking around, trying to figure out who exactly was fighting over the seven flowers leaf. In terms of effects, the one leaf seven flowers was worth at most 1,000,000 saint stones. Now that someone was willing to pay 10 times the price, they could not help but wonder if that person had the pill formula of the supreme divine pill. However, no matter how suspicious they were, they did not dare to make another bid. After all, they did not have the pill formula and did not dare to squander so many saint stones on the one leaf seven flowers. 10 million going once, going twice, going thrice. Sold. As soon as the cold voice sounded, the one leaf seven flowers disappeared under the reluctant gazes of the crowd and appeared in Lin Ye's hand. Buzz. As soon as it landed in Lin Ye's hand, the one leaf seven flowers emitted a seven-colored radiance. A gentle aura instantly slapped on the faces of Peng Tianyu and the rest. Peng Tianyu and the rest were shocked. They gathered around and looked curiously at the one leaf seven flowers. Just a tree branch is worth 10 million saint stones? TSK. That's a few million points. Cheng Yang sighed. Hong Ling and the rest also looked at Lin Yi in confusion. Of course it's worth it. With a grin, Lin Yi threw the one leaf seven flowers into the ninefold space and handed it to Biluo. Since Biluo was so excited, the one leaf seven flowers must not be as simple as it was described in the auction. At the same time, the next auction item appeared. It was a huge saber without any radiance. There were no patterns or pictures on the saber. It floated in the air, and its aura was very weak. If one did not look carefully, no one would be able to tell that it was a huge saber. What is that? Is that a sacred weapon? Why doesn't it look like one? In an instant, everyone was surprised and looked carefully at the huge saber. Shun Qingyun, who had been laughing all this while, looked at the huge saber with a tense expression. Her breathing quickened as she stared at it. Chapter 619. The giant saber floated in the air without any reaction. In the eyes of the crowd, it was like an ordinary piece of metal without any special characteristics. However, Shun Qingyan stared at the giant saber. Senior Shun, you've taken a fancy to this giant saber? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and could not help but be surprised. Even with his sensing ability, he could not sense the power within the giant saber. It was just like any other ordinary weapon. Could it be that the giant saber was so strange that he could not sense it? If that was the case, that giant saber must have some special effect. That's right. Shin Qingyun pursed her lips and suddenly said, I don't know why, but when I saw that giant saber, the blood in my body boiled. Hearing this, Lin Yi, Peng Tianyu, and the others turned to look at Shin Qingyun. They were all surprised. This was the first time the little devil girl, who had always been lawless, had shown such an attitude in front of them. Flawless White suddenly opened his eyes. Since it can stimulate your blood, let's bid for it. Treasures related to blood are at least at the sage level. Okay. Shin Qingyun nodded slightly, but she became nervous in her heart. If we don't have enough saint stones. Okay, Flawless White muttered. In an instant, Peng Tianyu and the others were shocked. They looked at Flawless White in shock. Could it be that the elders of Cebu Gakuen had the authority to help students auction things? If that was the case, should they also choose some treasures? It would be a waste not to take the benefits of the academy. Shin Qingyun also looked at Flawless White curiously. Her sparkling big eyes were especially cute. Ahem. If you don't have enough saint stones, ask Lin Yi for more. Don't miss out when someone pays for you. Flawless White revealed a strange smile and closed his eyes. Peng Tianyu, Cheng Yang, and the rest kept looking at Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun. Lin Yi was dumbfounded. He blinked his eyes, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He felt even more depressed in his heart. What was going on? Why was he so willing to help Shin Qingyun? However, Shin Qingyun had helped him a lot before. This time, Lin Yi really should help Shun Qingyun take down the giant saber. Senior sister Shun, you've helped me a lot previously. Leave it to me this time. Lin Yi chuckled and said to Shun Qingyun, who was still in a daze, Coincidentally, I have a lot of holy stone, so taking these things shouldn't be a problem. Shun Qingyun hesitated for a moment, then suddenly smiled and said, Okay, then I'll leave it to you. So generous? Seeing this, Peng Tianyu, Cheng Yang, and the rest were envious, especially Hong Ling. The way she looked at Lin Yi had changed. Hee. Lin Yi smiled faintly, but in the eyes of Peng Tianyu and the rest, he was unfathomable. At the same time, a cold voice was heard. Shin Qingyun quickly listened. No one knows the name of the nameless saber, and no one knows what grade of sacred weapon it is. However, even after taking the attacks of more than 10 heavenly sages, it is still safe and sound. There is no damage at all. Its sharpness is even more shocking. The blade contains a special power, and no one below the great sage level can resist it. As the voice was heard, the crowd looked at the nameless saber with burning eyes. It could withstand the attacks of heavenly sages, and the power it contained could crush anyone below the great sage level. This kind of treasure, even if it had no grade, was enough to tempt the crowd. The nameless saber starts at 3 million holy stones. 4,500,000. 5 million. Damn, this treasure is definitely not inferior to a supreme sacred weapon. I'll bid 6 million. Soon, the price reached a whopping 9 million under the fierce bidding of the crowd. In the VIP room, Shen Qingyun frowned and could not help but sigh. To be honest, she did not want Lin Yi to buy the nameless saber for her. After all, they were from the same sect. If the price was low, it would be fine. However, if the price was too high, she could not afford it. However, as the price rose, she might not be able to get the nameless saber by herself. Looking around, Shun Qingyun suddenly asked, Junior brother Lin, how many holy stones do you have? Ha ha ha, senior sister Shun, you don't have to worry about the holy stones. With a grin, Lin Yi turned around and shouted a shocking price. 15 million. As soon as he said that, the entire auction house fell silent. Then it set off a huge uproar. Gasps of shock and astonishment could be heard one after another. Hiss! 15 million. This price is enough to buy 3 supreme sacred weapons. Who is it that is so generous? Oh my God, which force is so rich? The real good stuff has not appeared yet. How dare he waste so many holy stones? The crowd was shocked. In their opinion, it must be a powerful force to be able to take out so many holy stones. However, what a powerful force needed was not such treasures. They needed something that could increase their overall strength. Moreover, according to the information revealed by the auction house, there were better things that were more suitable for each force. They needed to reserve most of their funds for the auction. Now, taking out 15 million holy stones in one go was not a good idea for them. One had to know that even if they gathered all their wealth, a force would only amount to 30 to 40 million saint stones. In addition to the basic expenses, even forces like the Sky Treasure Pavilion and the Sky Goblin Sect would only have 40 million holy stones as their bottom line. Therefore, when they heard this price, all the leaders of the forces looked at it curiously. However, it was a pity that this auction was extremely protective of one's privacy. Even if they were close, they could only feel and see a blurry figure. They could not even sense the aura. Moreover, Lin Yi was still in the VIP room and was blocked by an array. In an instant, all the forces calmed down. Even some rogue cultivators did not dare to compete. 15 million going once, going twice, going thrice. Sold. As soon as the cold voice sounded, the nameless saber disappeared and appeared in Lin Ye's hand in the VIP room. You. However, Peng Tianyu and the rest were not attracted by the nameless saber. Instead, they looked at Lin Yi in shock. Shen Qingyun's mouth was also slightly open. She looked at Lin Yi in surprise. Junior brother Lin, how do you have so many holy stones? 15 million saint stones wasn't a small sum. Even a first-rank clan would have to think twice before making such an offer. However, Lin Yi did not even bat an eyelid as he won the bid for the nameless saber. This made Shen Qingyun feel very grateful as her eyes reddened. It's nothing. Hey, why are those people so cowardly? When I saw them fighting so hard, I thought it would take more effort. Lin Yi sighed and said, I didn't expect that they would not dare to continue bidding after I just stated a price. Chapter 620. Peng Tianyu, Cheng Yang, and the rest looked at Lin Yi strangely. They couldn't help but suspect Lin Yi's identity. How could Lin Yi, who came from heavenly purification territory, have so many saint stones? Could it be that Lin Yi is actually a disciple of a top force? But the Lin family isn't in the top 30 forces. Everyone hesitated, but they didn't dare to underestimate Lin Yi anymore, especially Cheng Yang and Liao Jingyu. Previously, they were still unconvinced by Lin Yi, but now they were completely convinced. Putting aside his strength, just Lin Yi's wealth was enough to crush them. Junior brother Lin, thank you so much this time. Shen Qingyun said in a low voice, I'll compensate you in the future. Shen Qingyun took out a crystal card and handed it to Lin Yi. There are 9 million saint stones in here. If you want to buy something, it might be of some help if the price isn't enough. It's fine. Lin Yi grinned. I still have many saint stones with me. Moreover, the things I need aren't expensive. The Yifeng 7 flowers is an accident. Moreover, the people outside are too cowardly. They don't dare to compete with me. At this moment, Lin Yi felt a little lucky. If it wasn't for Flawless White giving him 100 million saint stones, he probably wouldn't have been able to buy a single item in this auction. Peng Tianyu, Cheng Yang, and the rest twitched their mouths when they heard this. Shen Qingyun also looked at Lin Yi strangely. They weren't cowards. It was clearly because he was too strong. How could they afford to raise the price by a few million saint stones? Normally, no matter how strong the nameless saber was, it would be worth 12 million saint stones at most. If the price was higher, it would be better to buy an upper or supreme grade supreme sacred weapon. The effects would be better. Lin Yi suddenly raised the price to 15 million, breaking everyone's bottom line. Naturally, they would not continue to follow. What if Lin Yi was scamming them just to raise the price? Wouldn't they suffer a huge loss? Words can't express my gratitude. I will remember this. Shen Qingyun pondered for a moment. She stopped looking at Lin Yi and reached out to stroke the nameless saber. Buzz! Suddenly, the sound of the blade vibrated, and a special aura filled the air, rippling out. Shwa! Everyone was shocked. They turned around and saw the nameless saber turn into a silver light and enter Shun Qingyun's body. For a moment, Shun Qingyun was stunned. She blinked her eyes and moved her fingers, but the nameless saber was gone. The nameless saber seems to have entered my body? The corners of Shun Qingyun's mouth twitched. He narrowed his eyes and began to sense the changes in her body. However, after sensing for a moment, Shun Qingyun's face turned ugly. Noticing this, Lin Yi, Peng Tianyu, and the others' faces changed slightly. They stopped paying attention to the auction items outside and carefully guarded Shun Qingyun, afraid that something would happen to her. Phew! After exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, Shun Qingyun opened her eyes. Her expression was grave. I can't sense the presence of the nameless saber. What? How could this be? Hearing this, Peng Tianyu and the others were shocked. It was not easy to get a treasured saber. How could it disappear just like that? Don't worry. Bai Wuxia suddenly said, it's a bloodline treasure, and now it's just merged into your bloodline. Bloodline treasure? What is that? Suddenly hearing this new term, Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the others asked in surprise. Bloodline treasure is also a type of supreme sacred weapon. However, it requires the power of bloodline to be used. Flawless White said indifferently. Normally, only a holy king can inject the power of bloodline into a bloodline treasure. In other words, Shun Qingyun's ancestor was a holy king. A holy king? Shun Qingyun's mouth opened slightly. She was rather surprised. She had been to the main family. The great sage was already of very high existence. How could there be a holy king? That's right. Flawless White rubbed his nose and said softly, don't worry. Now that the nameless saber has integrated with you, as long as you absorb enough nutrients, the nameless saber will appear. At that time, you will be able to use all the power of the nameless saber. I'm afraid that at that time, those below the heavenly saint realm will not be your match. Even if they are in the heavenly saint realm, you will be able to fight them. So powerful. Hearing this, Peng Tianyu and the others were rather shocked. Of course, if it's not powerful, wouldn't it be a waste of the Holy King's bloodline power? Flawless White said indifferently. It's not a loss to bid for 15 million. Moreover, normally, a supreme sacred weapon that a holy king is willing to spend effort on will have extraordinary effects. When it awakens, the benefits you will receive will be even greater. It seems that the 15 million is really worth it. Lin Yi nodded slightly. He was rather satisfied. The increase in Shun Qingyun's strength would also be beneficial to him. Moreover, Shun Qingyun was an inner yard disciple of the academy. When he entered the inner yard in the future, he would still need Shun Qingyun's help. This time, it was not a loss. Phew, then what do I have to do to awaken it? Shun Qingyun asked doubtfully. Don't worry about this. If you're lucky, perhaps you will be able to awaken it after this auction. Flawless White smiled and said, the standards of this auction are not low. If you find something suitable, you can bid for it. If you don't have enough holy stones, I can lend them to you first. Of course, if I lend them to you, I will not do it for free. It can also be considered as training for all of you. Think about it carefully. With that, Flawless White closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. Peng Tianyu and the others' mouths twitched as they looked at Lin Yi. Their burning gazes made Lin Yi tremble as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Brother Lin, if there is anything that we like, can you help us pay for it? Cough, cough, after we go out, we could talk to our families and ask for holy stones. Peng Tianyu and the others asked Lin Yi for help, but Lin Yi looked at Flawless White. He was very conflicted as to whether he should help Peng Tianyu and the others. Flawless White said this for two reasons. The first was that he really wanted to train Peng Tianyu and the others, so he could not interfere. The second was to help Lin Yi help Peng Tianyu and the others. In this way, they would be grateful to Lin Yi in the future and would definitely help Lin Yi. Lin Yi had a premonition that Flawless White was the second way, but he was not sure if Flawless White did not say it clearly. If he guessed wrong and disrupted Flawless White's plan, wouldn't he be made to suffer in the future? Flawless White was an elder with real power. If he offended him, he really did not want to stay in Cebu Gakuen anymore. Wait a minute. Eldabai gave me 100 million holy stones. With so many holy stones, even if I bid for all the holy herbs, it would be more than enough. Looks like Eldabai wants to help me. With that thought, Lin Yi immediately agreed to Peng Tianyu and the others with a smile. In an instant, Peng Tianyu and the others were filled with gratitude towards Lin Yi. Chapter 621. With Lin Ye's help, Peng Tianyu and the others were no longer restrained and began to look for treasures that were suitable for them. Sui Sui * Ming, Xiao * the auction was also in progress. As time passed, there were more and more kinds of treasures being auctioned. Whether it was martial skills, cultivation methods, divine sense cultivation methods, divine elixirs, sacred elixirs, slaves, or demon pets, all of them appeared like flowers. In this auction, the grades of the treasures were quite high. Basically, they were all supreme grade and supreme grade sacred elixirs. The worst was also inferior grade sacred elixirs. Moreover, the order was messy. It was not that the later it was, the more powerful it was. This made Lin Yi quite surprised. Generally speaking, the auction would choose to auction the treasures according to the strength of the treasures. The later it was, the stronger the treasures would be, thus attracting people's attention. However, the auction this time was very casual. As time passed, Shun Qingyan took a fancy to another set of saber techniques and spent 3 million to buy it. Peng Tianyu and the others, except for Hong Ling, who spent 5 million to buy supreme grade sacred elixir, the others did not find anything suitable. In addition, Lin Yi spent a huge sum of 20 million to buy dozens of divine elixirs and sacred elixirs that could restore the soul and divine sense power. The original huge sum of 100 million quickly dropped to more than 40 million. However, Lin Yi soon found that there were a few more piles of sacred stones in the storage ring. After careful calculation, Lin Yi was shocked. The number of sacred stones in his storage ring increased by another 500 million. Turning his head to look, Flawless White was still calmly cultivating, but Lin Ye's heart was surging. Cebu Gakuen, he really did not make a mistake. In the past, Lin Ye had joined countless sects, but he only did it to increase his own power. Those sects were also quite cold-blooded. In order to compete for resources, their fellow disciples would kill each other. However, Cebu Gakuen gave Lin Yi a completely different feeling. Whether it was Theta Scarabeei's bow, the kindness of the elders, or the harmony of the disciples of the same sect, they all gave him a special feeling. It was also because of this feeling that Lin Yi had established the Sky Rapier sect to give the new disciples a stable environment for them to cultivate. Although the older disciples bullied the new disciples and wanted to snatch resources, they also had their own principles and would never harm others' lives. When they were outside, all the disciples, it was very warm. For a moment, Lin Yez was determined to protect Cebu Gakuen. After gaining another 400 million saint stones, Lin Yi became even more heroic, and it infected Peng Tianyu and the others. He started to sweep through the auction. As long as they found treasures that were suitable treasures, they would snatch them. In the end, Lin Ye's voice became familiar to the other auctioneers. At first, they were a little shocked. They were shocked by Lin Ye's wealth. Some of them even calculated the number of saint stones that Lin Yi had spent. When they calculated that it was tens of millions, they were all shocked. They did not dare to guess Lin Ye's power. 2 days later, they were numb. Lin Yi bought a total of 7 supreme sacred artifacts and distributed them to Shun Qingyun and the others. As for cultivation techniques and herbs, there were countless of them. Of course, he squandered another 200 million saint stones of the remaining 400 million. 2 days later, Lin Yi only had 200 million saint stones left in his ring. The auction was finally coming to an end. Buzz! An ancient aura rippled, and a piece of parchment floated in the air. The pill formula of the supreme sacred pill, 7-heart pill. I don't need to explain its effects. The starting price is 10 million saint stones. What the F asterisk CK? The pill formula of the seven-heart pill? Damn, the seven-heart pill is a supreme, sacred pill. Why would the pill formula appear in this auction? No wonder the seven flowers leaf set such a high price. It turns out that the seven-heart pill exists. TSK. If I had known, I would have spent more saint stones to get the seven flowers leaf. As the cold voice fell, the crowd was annoyed. The seven-heart pill was a supreme, sacred pill. Its effects were powerful. If converted to saint stones, 500 million saint stones would not be enough. Of course, such a pill could not be refined without the strength of a heavenly saint or absolute saint. So I forget it. Without the seven flowers leaf, it's useless even if we have the pill formula. Amidst the clamor, the crowd sighed. The seven flowers leaf was not very effective, but it was extremely rare. Now that it had been bought, and they did not know the identity of the other party, it was useless even if they bought the seven-heart pill formula. It would be a waste of saint stones. As such, the crowd could only suppress the desire in their hearts and choose to give up. They were filled with regret. If they had known that the seven-heart pill was available, they would have bought the seven flowers leaf even if it meant going bankrupt. Not only could the seven-heart pill increase one's strength, but could also create 7 copies of oneself. Moreover, each soul clone strength was similar to the original. In that case, it would be equivalent to 8 copies of oneself. When combined, they would be invincible among those of the same cultivation level. It would not be impossible to fight against those of a higher cultivation level. More importantly, the soul clones created by the seven-heart pill were all the original. If they were in danger, even if they died, as long as one of the soul clones escaped, they would not die. At most, they would be severely injured. It was a godly pill. However, without the seven flowers leaf, the seven-heart pill could not be refined successfully. The seven flowers leaf might not appear even once in a few thousand years. After missing the seven flowers leaf, they could only choose to give up on the seven-heart pill. They gave up, but Linyi was excited. There were many heavenly saints in Cebu Gakuen. As long as he bought the seven-heart pill formula and refined it successfully, his strength would increase by leaps and bounds. Without hesitation, Linyi called out a bid of 11 million. In order to prevent others from recognizing that he was the one who bought the seven flowers leaf, he did not raise the price too much at once. However, the eyes of the people from the other forces lit up, and they all raised the price. They knew that the person who dared to bid for the seven-heart pill must have the seven flowers leaf. Since that was the case, they did not mind letting the person spend more saint stones. Otherwise, wouldn't it be too easy for him? If the person who bought the seven flowers leaf was their enemy, they would be more than happy to disgust him. 12 million. 13 million. Not long after, the price had been raised to as much as 18 million. Linya's face was extremely gloomy. This group of people had no use for the seven-heart pill formula, and they still wanted to raise the price with him. They were simply looking for trouble. Hiss, since you want to mess with me, let's see if you have the money to do so. With a cold gaze, Linya's bid silenced the auction once again. 40 million. Is this guy crazy? A high price of 40 million. This price should be enough to get the last item, right? As soon as the voice fell, the crowd was shocked. They kept looking around, trying to find the person who had bid. Chapter 622. As soon as Linya's voice fell, everyone was stunned. Sway_Meng. In the past 2 days, other than the nameless saber, which was sold at a high price of 15 million, the rest of the treasures were sold for a few million at most. This time, Linya's bid had doubled the highest price, which shocked everyone. His voice. I remember now. He was the one who bought the nameless saber. Oh my god, who is he? He actually bought so many things. Does he really have so many saint stones? How terrifying. Even the Sky Treasure Pavilion doesn't seem to have such wealth. What kind of power is he? I wonder if they're still short of people. The crowd was shocked and kept discussing. Their hearts were filled with horror. Those big powers were also shocked and did not dare to bid anymore. What a joke. They had only brought 30 to 40 million. How could they compete with Lin Yi? In this space, if they bid a price that they could not afford, only death would await them. What kind of power does this guy belong to? I remember that no matter if it's the Sunset City or the powers around a nine-nether sky, they don't have such wealth. Could it be that some hidden almighty has followed him in? Some of the people from the big powers discussed in low voices, guessing Lin Yi's identity. Soon, Lin Yi won the Seven Hearts pill formula without anyone raising the price. The Wild Tiger Saber is a supreme sacred weapon. It contains the spirit of the sacred tiger and contains a powerful force. Moreover, it seems to be a combination sacred weapon. If you can find other combination sacred weapons, its power will not be inferior to a divine weapon. The starting price is 5 million saint stones. A saber with the spirit of the sacred tiger sealed in it. 5 million saint stones is too expensive. No matter how well they describe the wild tiger saber, it could not pique the interest of many people. Only a few experts who like to use sabers started to size it up and started to test the waters. This time, it was all rogue cultivators who bid, so the price did not rise very quickly. In the end, it was won at a price of 5 million saint stones. After the wild tiger battle saber was taken down, the light on the stage suddenly flickered and became brighter. A set of array formation appeared on the high platform. 3 array flags fluttered in the wind, and a biting cold killing intent emanated from the array flags. Those killing intents suddenly transformed into sword chi, saber intent, or even thunderbolts. They were unfathomable and terrifying. Triple slaughter formation. Even a heavenly saint would not be able to escape from the supreme rank-killing array. Regardless of whether it was an ambush or guarding the sect, it was the most powerful weapon. The starting price is 10 million saint stones. He's here. It's finally the 3 kills formation's turn. In an instant, the people from all the forces were boiling with excitement, their eyes burning with passion. The price soared as well. In just a dozen breaths' time, it had already risen to 20 million saint stones. To these large forces, having a sect protecting formation was a very important thing. Not only could the 3 kills formation protect the sect, but it could also be carried around to kill others. Naturally, these forces would not want to miss out on it. In the VIP room, Lin Yi and the others were shocked. They did not expect that a formation would be sold for such a high price. Hiss! No one in the Sacred Depository Pavilion would be willing to exchange for such a killing formation. I did not expect it to be so popular outside. Amidst the exclamations, the price of the 3 kills formation had already reached 28 million saint stones. In this way, some of the smaller forces were brought up, and only a few forces were still fighting for it. The speed of the price increased instead. 30 million, 33 million, 38 million. Wow. As soon as the voice fell, everyone was shocked. The price of a supreme killing formation was generally around 20 million saint stones. However, as the supreme killing formation was not something that could be bought with 20 million saint stones, it would cost at least 30 million saint stones. However, the price had risen to 38 million saint stones, which was still shocking. 38 million saint stones going once, an ice-cold voice sounded, but before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by a voice that was gnashing teeth. 45 million saint stones. Hiss! In an instant, the sound of people gasping could be heard. The 3 kills formation had once again broken the record for the highest price in this auction. 45 million saint stones going once, going twice. The cold voice sounded, but this time, no one interrupted it. This price was enough to make any force retreat. They were not Cebu Gakuin. 45 million saint stones were enough to support their entire forces and families. They could not spend it recklessly. As for Lin Yi, although he had many saint stones, he was not interested in the killing formation. Instead of wasting so many saint stones, he would rather buy more saint herbs. Going thrice sold. As the 3 kills formation dissipated, the hearts of many forces sank. Some were happy, while others were sad. However, the auction would not end because of them. Those forces that did not get the 3 kills formation could only set their sights on other treasures. Each of them had saved up 20 million saint stones, which was enough to buy some martial techniques, cultivation techniques, and the like to increase the overall strength of their forces. Next, the treasures that were auctioned off became other small trinkets. Another day passed, and the number of holy stone in Lin Ye's hands had already reached around 120 million. Peng Tianyu and the others were shocked by Lin Yi. The endless supply of saint stones made them wonder if the regions under the Tianlan true domain were richer and more powerful. Soon, the auction was coming to an end. One by one, the lights on the stage dimmed. When a mark appeared on the last stage, a gentle divine thought power instantly filled the entire auction house, cleansing everyone's soul. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Almost instantly, everyone felt refreshed, and their hearts were incomparably carefree. Even those who did not get anything good were full of joy. The last treasure of this auction is a mark and information about a relic. In the relic, there is a cultivation technique called God's Guide. Perhaps many of you don't know about the Heavenly God's Guide, so let me introduce it to you all. Heavenly Deity Induction, a peerless grade Saint Tier Divine Sense Cultivation Technique. It can increase one's divine sense and protect one's soul. More importantly, the Heavenly God Induction is the prerequisite for the 9 Heavens God Induction. If you are fated, you will be able to comprehend the 9 Heavens Godly Attraction through the Heavenly God's Attraction. The prerequisite for a divine level technique? Deity Induction, a peerless saint level spiritual force cultivation technique. In an instant, the entire auction house was in an uproar. A deity-level cultivation technique, an existence that surpassed the saint level, would naturally drive them crazy. Inside the VIP room, Lin Ye's expression froze, but great waves were set off in his heart. He had already obtained the Divine God Guide, so why would it still exist in other ruins? Chapter 6:23. Lin Yi, you must bid for it. Biluo's voice suddenly rang out. She seemed to have sensed Lin Ye's confusion and immediately explained, the God's Induction is a prerequisite technique. There are a total of 3 books, the first, middle, and the second volume. Follow, dream, swimming. Cultivating just 1 volume will allow you to unleash the full power of the God's Induction. However, if you want to cultivate the 9 Heavens Divine Induction, you will need the 9 Heavens Divine Induction technique. If you successfully cultivate all 3 volumes, although the power will not increase, you will have a chance to directly comprehend the 9 Heavens Divine Induction technique. I see. Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but be shocked. It seemed like it was necessary to collect the God's Induction technique. Just think about it. Even if he obtained the 9 Heavens Divine Induction technique, it would be difficult to cultivate it without breaking through to the God level. However, breaking through to the God level was not a joke. There had not been a God-level expert on this continent for many years. It would be a fool's dream to break through. However, if he collected the God's Induction technique, he would be able to comprehend it without breaking through. Comprehending a God-level technique as a saint would not only increase his strength, but also increase his chances of breaking through to the God level after breaking through to the Holy Emperor level. Therefore, after hearing about the God's Induction, almost all the independent cultivators and forces, including Lin Yi, went crazy. The starting bid is 10 million saint stones, 11 million, 12 million, 23,000,000. Just as he finished speaking, the frenzied crowd raised the price to 23 million. At this time, Lin Yi did not hesitate and directly raised the price to 30 million. 31 million. However, the forces were too crazy. One after another, the price was raised to 36 million. At this time, the speed of the price increase slowed down. Lin Yi was not afraid and immediately raised the price to 40 million. Everyone in the auction house was shocked. They could hear Lin Ye's voice and were extremely surprised. F***CK, that guy has spent at least 200 million holy stone. How can he still have so many holy stone? Luckily he didn't fight for the 3 kills formation earlier. Otherwise, it would be hard to say who would win the 3 kills formation. Could it be that the price of this piece of information surpasses the price of the 3 kills array and the 7-heart pill? The crowd were all surprised. As for the major powers, they started to frown. They also wanted information about the Divine Guide, but now it seemed that they had no chance of competing with Lin Yi in terms of financial resources. Damn it, who the hell is that guy? He had already wasted so many holy stones earlier. How could he still have money? Are we really going to cooperate? After a moment of hesitation, the leaders of the various forces began to discuss among themselves. Not long after, just as the spirit in the auction house was about to speak, the various major forces finally reached an agreement. Several forces gathered all their saint stones together, wanting to buy information about the Heavenly God Guide. At that time, it would be up to their own ability to obtain the Heavenly God Guide. 41 million. As soon as the voice fell, the cold voice stopped abruptly. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. He didn't want to trouble himself, so he directly called out a price of 50 million. 51 million. However, those forces quickly added another 1 million, which surprised Lin Yi. When did those forces have so many holy stones? That's strange. They bought so many things earlier, including the 3 kill formation. They shouldn't have so many holy stones. Peng Tianyu and the others quickly realized that something was wrong. Lin Yi rubbed his nose and suddenly said, I think they must have teamed up. They know that Theta Scarabii can't compete with me, so they gathered all their holy stones together. Anyway, it's just information about the Heavenly God Guide, so it can be shared. Then what should we do? Peng Tianyu and the others asked doubtfully. Brother Lin, we still have some holy stones. Let's compete with them. No need. Lin Yi grinned and said, of all the things to compete with me, they just had to compete with me in holy stones. This time, I'm going to give them a hard blow. In the auction house, those forces couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when they saw that Lin Yi didn't increase the price. It seemed that 50 million was already Lin Yi's limit. However, before the leaders of those forces could completely relax, Lin Yi's voice was like a sudden clap of thunder that suddenly exploded in their hearts. 70 million holy stones. Almost at the same time that Lin Yi's voice fell, everyone in the auction house felt their legs go soft, and they almost knelt on the ground. Their expressions were even more horrified, as if they had seen a ghost. 70 million saint stones. This was already a huge sum. Even the entire Sky Demon sect didn't have 70 million holy stones, let alone the Sky Treasure Pavilion. For ordinary forces, having 10 to 20 million holy stones was already the limit. As for forces like the Yu clan, they were even more miserable. They only had a few million holy stones. After spending hundreds of millions of holy stones, Lin Yi was still able to take out 70 million holy stones. This shocked them. Gulp! The sound of people swallowing their saliva could be heard. The leaders of the various forces looked at each other, gritted their teeth, and decided to fight one last time. If it still didn't work, they could only give up. 80 million holy stones. 80 million holy stones? Lin Yi suddenly laughed out loud. Since you want to fight, then I'll accompany you. Let's start with 100 million holy stones. 100 million holy stones. Oh my God. Am I dreaming? 100 million holy stones. SSS, who exactly is he? To be able to take out so many holy stones, I'm afraid that person is an elite who has surpassed the Sky Saint realm. Suddenly, the auction house was in complete chaos. Everyone was full of respect for Lin Yi, and they didn't even dare to make a noise. This included those Sky Saint realm elites. Even if they were in the Sky Saint realm, having tens of millions of holy stones was already the limit. However, Lin Yi had already spent hundreds of millions of holy stones, and now he could still take out 100 million holy stones. In their opinion, his strength must be unfathomable. As such, the leaders of the various forces didn't dare to continue fighting. They quickly shut their mouths, and their faces turned pale. They were afraid that the person in the dark would be angry and attack them in the end. Of course, if they continued to fight, they wouldn't be able to win. Facing an elite who had surpassed the Sky Saint realm, they still knew their limits. Otherwise, they would have been destroyed by the other forces long ago. 100 million holy stones going once, going twice, going thrice sold. As soon as he finished speaking, the mark suddenly disappeared. At the same time, a cold voice sounded. The auction has ended. Distinguished guests, please don't move. After 15 minutes, you will be sent out. The figure quietly disappeared, but the crowd was still immersed in the shock that Lin Yi had given them. They didn't dare to move. Chapter 624. In the VIP room, the mark appeared and quickly disappeared into Lin Ye's forehead. Lawing. In a flash, the imprint completely disappeared without a trace. Lin Yi was slightly surprised. He quickly calmed his mind and tried to sense it, but he did not find anything. It's useless. This is just a qualification. Biluo's voice rang out. It seems like the people who organized this auction did not understand what this was. Otherwise, they would not have put it up for auction. Hearing Biluo's words, Lin Yi was surprised. Could it be that this mark is very important? That's right, Biluo said in a deep voice. Without this mark, even if they found the ruins and successfully obtained the Divine God Guide Manual, they would not be able to open it and cultivate it. Previously, you could cultivate the Divine God Guide Manual because it had already been unsealed. However, no one has found the second Divine God Guide Manual yet. It requires the mark to open it. So, you've made a fortune. Even tens of billions of saint stones can't compare to this mark. Hearing this, Lin Yi, who was still a little depressed, suddenly became excited. This meant that the second Divine God Guide Manual was in the bag. Right, you can't read the information contained in the mark at your current level. I'll seal it for you first, Biluo said in a deep voice. Next, you should focus on saint energy and break through to the great sage level as soon as possible. By then, whether it is the second scroll of the 3,000 heavenly ways or the Divine God Guide, you can try them all. Okay. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi made up his mind to focus on cultivation. As for the fusion of divine consciousness cultivation methods, he would not focus on it anymore. If he could come across a divine consciousness cultivation method, he would not miss it. When Peng Tianyu and the others saw Lin Yi suddenly stunned, they thought that it was because of the mark. They immediately protected Lin Yi. After a while, Lin Yi reacted and smiled. Thank you. We should be thanking you. Peng Tianyu and the others grinned and said, Don't worry, when we return to the academy this time, we will send the news back and get our family to give us the holy stones. There's no hurry. Lin Yi chuckled. He did not take those holy stone to heart. Indeed, there's no hurry. Flawless White ended his cultivation abruptly and looked at them with a smile. I forgot to tell you one thing. From now on, your mission will enter the next stage, which is to bring the items you've obtained from the auction back to the academy. Even though you were the ones who won the auction, once you return to the institute, if even a single item is missing, the mission will be considered a failure. I won't do anything. If I fail, the only outcome will be death. It's time for me to leave. As soon as he finished speaking, Bai Wuxia's figure quietly disappeared from this space. Lin Yi and the others were dumbfounded, not knowing what was going on. The auction had just ended, and their mission was about to enter the next stage. Most of the people who came to participate in the auction were of the Great Sage realm, and there were even a few heavenly sages. Without Flawless White, it would be very, very difficult for them to charge out. What made Lin Yi even more depressed was his plan in Luori City. 3 days had passed, and Luori City must be in chaos. If he did not return, the Yu family would not be able to clean up the mess. Furthermore, his own subordinates were still in Luori City. How could he just leave? Gulp. The rules of the auction said that we could not leave halfway. We could only wait for the auction to send us out. How powerful is Elderbai? How could he just fly out like that? It seems like Elderbai is much stronger than we thought. Peng Tianyu, Cheng Yang, and Liao Jingyu looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock. Lin Yi already knew of Flawless White's power, so he was not too surprised. It seems like we need to keep a low profile from now on. Lin Yi rubbed his nose and said in a low voice, "Keep a low profile. No one will know who we are. We can leave safely. I have to go back to Luri City first. Who wants to come with me? Let's go together." Peng Tianyu and the others looked at each other, then nodded in agreement. This time, Lin Yi had helped them a lot. Now that Lin Yi was in trouble, they naturally had to help. "Phew, with you guys, I have a better chance." Lin Yi's lips curled. He was about to continue speaking when he heard a trembling sound. Buzz. A strange energy filled the air. Lin Yi and the others felt their bodies sink and their vision darkened. When they opened their eyes again, they were already in the middle of a sky full of yellow sand. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sand whistled and slapped everyone's bodies. Lin Yi and the others looked up and saw that the huge palace was disintegrating at extremely fast speed, turning into a sky full of sand that danced in the air. At the same time, one figure after another was transported out. They're out just like that. This auction is really strange. For a moment, some of the people who were attending the auction for the first time were extremely surprised. As for the old people who had attended the auction several times, they just happened to bid for the treasures. As soon as they appeared, they quietly slipped away. Sensing this, Lin Yi and the others felt a chill in their hearts. They did not dare to stay any longer and quickly left. However, just as Lin Yi and the others were about to leave, an invisible force quietly swept past Lin Yi's body. Boom! Suddenly, the storage ring in Lin Yi's hand burst open. Lin Yi's expression changed drastically. He was shocked by Theta Scarabii. Before he could react, the treasures in the storage ring had all burst out, floating in the air and shining with a dazzling light. The rich aura of sacred medicine filled the air. In an instant, everyone's eyes turned to Lin Yi and the others. As they looked at the treasures floating in the air, their eyes were filled with greed. Previously, it was Lin Yi who had bid for the treasures. For the sake of convenience, most of the treasures were directly placed with Lin Yi. Lin Yi simply put them into the storage ring together. However, he did not expect that the storage ring would spoil everything. Gulp! The sound of saliva swallowing could be heard. Everyone looked at the treasures greedily. Wait a minute, that's the Saint Heart grass. That's the red fire star. So many sacred great herbs. No, the only person who bought many herbs in the auction was the one who bid for the 1-leaf 7 flowers, 7 heart pill, and the clue to the God's Guide. That guy is the mysterious elite. Impossible, his strength seems to be only at the intermediate saint level. In an instant, exclamations could be heard. Someone had already recognized Lin Yi. Lin Yi, Peng Tianyu, and the others' expressions suddenly became serious. An ordinary man's wealth was his own ruin. With so many treasures exposed, they were already in big trouble. Now that others had found out that they were weak, it would be even more troublesome. Chapter 6:25. In their panic, Shun Qingyun, Peng Tianyu, and the others hurriedly put away the herbs and treasures. Follow? Dream? However, the others had already seen the treasures, and it was useless for them to put them away. Thousands of figures quietly surrounded Lin Yi and the others. Dense saint aura pressed down on Lin Yi and the others like a mountain. Regardless of whether it was the independent cultivators, the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, the Heavenly Eagle sect, or other forces, they all surrounded them. Even the forces from the abysmal heavenly domain were no exception. Thousands of people stared at Lin Yi and the others. For a moment, Lin Yi and the others could not help but panic. There were hundreds of great sage and thousands of saints surrounding them. There were even heavenly saints. How could they fight back? No matter how talented they could not cross so many levels to fight against heavenly saints. Not to mention heavenly saints, they were not even a match for great sage in the late or peak of the great sage level. Swallowing their saliva, Lin Yi, Peng Tianyu, and Shun Qingyun gathered together with their backs against each other, feeling hopeless. The difference in strength between them and their enemies was like heaven and earth, and their numbers were pitifully small. How could they survive? However, Lin Yi still had doubts in his heart. Although his space storage ring was not saint level, it was still extremely sturdy. How could it suddenly break? In Lin Yi's heart, he always had a special premonition. Time passed slowly. Thousands of people surrounded Lin Yi and the others, but no one dared to make a move. The more they sensed, the more curious they were. That's strange. These little guys are only saints. How could they bid for so many treasures? A conservative estimate is that they spent a total of more than 400 million saint stones during the auction. So many saint stones are not something that a few clans can afford. Even a peak first-class clan would find it difficult. Everyone began to whisper and discuss in low voices. Although they did not dare to attack, they surrounded Lin Yi's group and did not allow them to leave. They were waiting for the first person to make a move. Phew, I don't care anymore. No matter how powerful the forces behind them are, no one can protect them here. That's right. As long as we do it cleanly and destroy their corpses, with so many people here, the forces behind them won't be able to find us. At this point, the crowd looked at Lin Yi and the others with a cold expression. The closer they got to them, the colder their saint aura became. Be careful. Noticing this, Lin Yi reminded Shen Qingyun and the others, and began to call for Biluo in his mind. At this time, unless Biluo borrowed his strength, it would be very difficult for them to leave safely. Or perhaps someone at the level of flawless white would save them. Cabinet Master. That kid is the one who helped the Yu clan earlier. Suddenly, someone recognized Lin Yi. In an instant, all the forces in the Sunset City looked at Lin Yi with even more ferocity. Previously, the Yu clan had made a huge move, causing the various forces to suffer considerable losses. Naturally, they would not treat Lin Yi kindly. Damn it. So this kid is the one who helped the Yu clan. It seems like these sacred herbs and the supreme sacred weapon were all prepared for the Yu clan. Everyone in the Sunset City, listen up, get ready to attack. As the piercing voice fell, the murderous intent became even more intense. Ha, killed him. As the voice fell, thousands of saints suddenly attacked. A frenzied power gathered together like a huge fireball, exploding towards Lin Yi and the others. This time, the great sage did not attack. They only looked coldly at Lin Yi and the others. In their opinion, there were just a few saints, and there was no need for them to attack. Boom! The violent attack fell. The power gathered by thousands of saints could destroy the heavens and the earth. The strong saint aura pressed down on Lin Yi and the others, causing them to feel despair. Even though Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun had the strength to contend with the great sage, they could only stabilize their legs. They could not even lift their heads under the powerful saint aura. No, there are too many of them. Shen Qingyun frowned and said, "We have to leave this place. Otherwise, we will die." Damn it. Lin Yi and the others' expressions changed drastically. Their eyes darted around as they frantically pondered. However, the attacks of the saints were like a storm that rained down on them at an extremely fast speed. Boom, boom, boom. 5-element sphere, Taishin shield, 8-fold defense. Feeling the violent power, Lin Yi did not dare to hold back. His 3 types of defensive power exploded out at once. Boom! The power of the sphere bloomed. The 5-element sphere was like a guardian deity, quickly enveloping Lin Yi and the others. Then, the Taishin shield appeared in front of the 5-element sphere. As for the 8-fold defense, it was attached to the Taishin light shield. Boom, boom, boom. Bang! In the next moment, the violent power fell on the Taishin light shield like a storm. In the loud sound, the power fell one after another. In just a dozen breaths, all the light and patterns on the Taishin light shield were shattered. Crack! One crack after another quietly appeared on the supreme, profound light shield. The power fell continuously. The Taishin light shield could not withstand it anymore and collapsed. Without any defense, the remaining power poured down like a torrential flood, crashing into the 5 elements domain. Ha ha ha. These little guys are only in the saint realm. How dare they bring so many saint stones out? They are courting death. Tis TSK, I thought they were just pretending. I didn't expect them to be so weak. I really don't know what their families are thinking. They actually let them bring so many saint stones and are still so arrogant. They are courting death. Seeing this, the leaders of the various forces could not help but laugh wildly. Their eyes were filled with greed. Other things aside, the items bought with more than 400 million saint stones were all in the storage ring, together with the remaining saint stones on them. Their hearts were filled with greed. Hee hee, looks like the God's Guide is in our hands this time. Let's set the rules first. We will share the information about the God's Guide. As for who can get it in the future, it will depend on their own abilities. The leaders were discussing how to divide the treasures, as if they had already snatched the treasures. Buzz, buzz, buzz. An invisible force quietly surged, protecting the 5 elements domain. Just as those few people were discussing this, a violent power landed on the 5-element domain one after another. In an instant, there was a loud explosion and a surging shockwave spread out and swept out. Boom! A violent gust of wind suddenly pushed everyone around back a few feet. Even the great sage and the heavenly sage were no exception. Who is it? Chapter 6:26. Who's there? Shocked voices rang out as several heavenly saint powerhouses suddenly flew up. Their eyes were piercingly cold as they stared in the direction of Lin Yi and the others. Everyone was dumbfounded, including the leaders of those forces. Their faces were even more dumbfounded as they looked around in shock. The power of the shockwave had frightened them. It was definitely not the power of a saint. They looked up and saw that the 5-element sphere was still protecting Lin Yi and the rest. The 5 elements flowed around it, and it looked glorious. A figure landed quietly from the sky with his hands behind his back. He was dressed in a white robe and looked calm, like an immortal. An indescribable aura filled everyone's hearts. All the leaders of the various forces and the heavenly saints were terrified. They could not help but take a few steps back. The power of one person had shocked thousands of saints and dozens of heavenly saints. This was the power of an expert. Within the 5-element sphere, Lin Yi and the rest felt that something was wrong. They quickly dispersed the 5-element sphere. When they looked up, they were stunned. Flawless white floated in the air like an immortal. Thousands of people were so shocked that they did not dare to speak. They trembled in fear. So powerful. If only I had this kind of power. Peng Tianyu and the rest murmured. They were excited. Only Lin Yi and Shun Qingyan frowned. They believed in flawless white's power. However, there were too many enemies. Moreover, there was the terrifying 3 killings formation. Even for Bai Wuxia, it was difficult for him to fight against so many powerhouses by himself. Lin Yi and Shun Qingyan were worried. However, they could not help flawless white. After all, the difference in power between them was too great. After a while, the people of Sunset City finally reacted. They shouted coldly, "Who are you? How dare you go against Sunset City?" We're from the heavenly demon sect of the 9 Nether Sky domain. In an instant, more than 10 forces revealed their names. However, to their surprise, Flawless White laughed out loud when he heard their names. In an instant, everyone couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts, and they were completely at a loss for words. How dare he laugh after hearing their names? Either he was crazy, or his power was much stronger than theirs. However, Flawless White was powerful. Regardless of whether it was the former or the latter, they did not dare to make an enemy of him. A madman was an unreasonable existence. No matter who he was, they would kill him first. They did not have much confidence in defeating Flawless White. If they could not scare Flawless White, they could only choose to leave. As for the latter's case, they would be even more terrifying. They could not even leave. They had to apologize first. Otherwise, Luri City might not have been destroyed. Just when everyone was panicking, Bai Wuxia sized them up and sneered. Interesting. You guys took the initiative to besiege my sacred martial academy students, and you still dare to ask me who I am. It seems that we were too kind to you. Sibu Gakuin? Hiss, they're Cebu Gakuin's men? As soon as he finished speaking, the people of Sunset City began to panic. Everyone, including those from the Sky Treasure Pavilion, hurriedly retreated a dozen steps. As for those from the Netherworld Heavens, although they were not as afraid, they also took a few steps back. Their eyes narrowed, and they were already thinking of retreating. Cebu Gakuin was a terrifying existence that controlled the entire Tianlan true domain. How dare they provoke them? In the entire continent, there were only 3 forces that could be compared to Cebu Gakuin. In front of the most powerful forces, they had no right to speak. Senior, the Sky Treasure Pavilion's owner, trembled. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. He begged for mercy in a trembling voice. We were reckless. We did not know that they were Cebu Gakuin's disciples. Otherwise, we would not have dared to attack them, even if we had 100 times the courage. Ha ha ha. It's too late to apologize now. Flawless White laughed out loud. You think you can go against Cebu Gakuin? Hearing this, the forces of the Sunset City were terrified. Every one of them trembled, unable to say a word. Noticing this, the people from the Netherworld Heaven shouted, Pavilion Master Chun, since Cebu Gakuin is unwilling to let you go, why don't you fight with us? Since we're going to die anyway, why don't we fight? As soon as he finished speaking, the people of Sunset City began to harbor thoughts of rebellion. Indeed, Flawless White gave them a strong sense of oppression. Cebu Gakuin was a godlike existence. However, there were almost 10,000 of them, and many of them were Sky Saints. Why couldn't they fight Flawless White? After they killed Flawless White, Cebu Gakuin would send people to deal with them. They could just leave. Cebu Gakuin was powerful in the Tianlan true domain, but the other forces in the Netherworld Heavens were still the strongest. However, they were reluctant to give up the foundation of Sunset City. It had taken them hundreds of years, maybe even thousands of years to build it up. It was the blood and sweat of dozens of generations. They were unwilling to give it up so easily. For a moment, the people of Sunset City hesitated. Ha ha ha! The Netherworld Heavens? Flawless White raised his eyebrows and looked at them coldly. He suddenly said, People from the Netherworld Heavens, how dare you come to the Tianlan true domain without permission? You're courting death. I'll give you 10 breaths of time to leave. Otherwise, don't blame me for starting a massacre. Ha ha ha! The people from the Netherworld Heavens laughed coldly. He's just an elder. If Theta Scarabii and the others come, we'll leave immediately. But what ability do you have? Besides, this is just the border of the Tianlan true domain. Why can't we come here? Ha! Flawless White laughed coldly. He didn't say anything, but looked at the people of Sunset City. The people of Sunset City were still hesitating. They kept looking at Flawless White and the people from the Netherworld Heavens. Ha ha ha! Suddenly, the people from the Netherworld Heavens laughed coldly. Pavilion Master Chun, I didn't expect you to be so cowardly. To think that the Celestial Demon Sect supported you. You're just a pile of mud. The people of Sunset City were furious, but they didn't dare to say anything. Those heavenly saints were from the Netherworld Heavens. They were only there to help them take over Sunset City. Now that this had happened, if they fell out with the Netherworld Heavens, they would have no chance of survival. Haha, it's just an unknown elder, not Theta Scarabii and the others. What are you afraid of? Let's attack together, kill them, and take their treasures. From then on, we'll be free to fly. As long as you hide in the Netherworld Heavens, I don't believe that Cebu Gakuin and the others will dare to come after you. Baidu Search Dong 81 Chinese Network O. No advertising message. Chapter 6:27. The sound of bells and drums reverberated in the ears of the Sunset City people. In an instant, their expressions became even more serious. Their gazes gradually turned cold as they looked at Bai Wuxia. It was clear that they had been persuaded. However, due to Flawless White's pressure, they did not dare to make a move. Sensing this, Flawless White's lips curled up. He did not stop the Netherworld people, but looked at them mockingly. His goal was to get rid of the Sunset City people. At first, he was worried that the Sunset City people would beg for mercy. If that was the case, he would be embarrassed to kill them all. Since the Netherworld people could persuade the Sunset City people, he naturally would not stop them. On the contrary, he had to thank the Netherworld people. Of course, Flawless White could not appear too calm. Otherwise, the Sunset City people would definitely sense that something was wrong. They were already afraid of Cebu Gakuen. If they sensed that something was wrong, they would definitely not dare to resist. Rolling his eyes, Flawless White suddenly laughed coldly. What a joke. If you dare to attack me, Cebu Gakuen will not let you go even if you run to the ends of the earth, let alone Netherworld. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone from the 9 Nether Heaven sneered. A large region had the protection of a supreme force. They had the protection of Geo Dragon School, so naturally, they would not be too afraid of Cebu Gakuen. Unfortunately, they had underestimated Cebu Gakuen's determination to get rid of the Sunset City people this time. Ha ha ha. If you had the guts, you would have attacked already, right? You are indeed very strong. Even I do not dare to resist. Suddenly, a Sky Sage expert shouted coldly. But we have nearly 10,000 people here. Hundreds of great sage experts, tens of thousands of saints, and dozens of Sky Sages. Pavilion Master Chun, quickly take out the triple kill formation. As long as we use the triple kill formation, this guy will definitely be no match for us. Yes, the triple kill formation. Hearing this, the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion was overjoyed. Without any hesitation, he stood up and flew back to the people from the 9 Nether Heaven. Brothers, follow me. Cebu Gakuen is bent on destroying us. We can't just sit here and wait for our doom. Only one person came today. As long as we kill him and escape to the 9 Nether Heaven, even Cebu Gakuen won't be able to do anything to us. The rest of the people from Sunset City rose to their feet and flew towards a group from 9 Serenity's Heaven. Just as they had said earlier, in their opinion, Flawless White was only one person, while Lin Yi and the others were only saints. No matter how talented they were, they wouldn't be of much use in this situation. In other words, as long as they killed Flawless White, they would be able to survive. After that, they could escape to other large domains. Even Cebu Gakuen wouldn't dare to cross large domains to capture them. They were fugitives to begin with, so escaping to another large region was not something they could not accept. Death was the only thing they feared. Ha ha ha! Seeing this, the people from the 9 Nether Heaven were overjoyed and laughed out loud. They looked at Flawless White with eyes full of killing intent. TSK. Judging from your aura, you're definitely an invincible heavenly saint. If we kill you, I'm sure Cebu Gakuen will be heartbroken. As the cold voice sounded, dozens of heavenly saints stepped forward and stood in front of the crowd, staring at Flawless White. Violent saint aura swept out like a huge wave, surging toward Flawless White. Feeling the violent power, Flawless White smiled and extended his right index finger. In the next moment, the shadow of an index finger appeared, shining with a milky white light. You want to kill me? Let's see if you have the ability to do so. Huh. Holy light finger. As soon as his voice fell, the milky white radiance suddenly bloomed into a dazzling silvery white brilliance, and a holy aura filled the air, filling the phantom of the index finger. Suddenly, it collided with the saint aura that filled the sky and was mixed with violent power. Boom! There was a violent explosion, and the saint aura that was like a huge wave was penetrated by the silver brilliance. Rumble. Without any obstruction, the giant wave burst forth and abruptly descended. The milky white shadow of the index finger was like a sickle, sweeping past the people from the 9 Nether Heaven and Sunset City. In an instant, shrill screams were heard. Countless saints felt a chill run down their spines. When they looked down again, their bodies had been cut apart, and their heads had been separated from their bodies. Some unlucky people were even sliced into dozens of pieces, leaving behind only a sky full of blood. Oh no! Retreat! Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked and hurriedly retreated. Even the dozens of heavenly saints were stunned as they looked at flawless white in shock. Brothers, let's attack together. This guy is definitely an invincible heavenly saint. Pavilion Master Chun, bring out the triple kill formation. The voices kept ringing out, but Bai Wuxiao was not afraid at all. Laughing loudly, he suddenly flew up and rushed toward the people from the 9 Serenities Heaven. You're courting death. Everyone, let's attack together. The people from the 9 Nether Heaven were furious. There were so many of them, but Flawless White still dared to charge at them. He was simply ignoring them. Burning with anger, the people from the 9 Nether Heaven burst out with their strongest power. Rumble. Wong. In an instant, saber essence, sword chi, scorching flames, violent lightning, and all kinds of realm power gathered together and smashed toward Flawless White like lightning. At the same time, sabers, spears, swords, halberds, and many other formations burst out with shocking power and shook the void. Flawless White's body was in the middle of the explosion. Wong, an invisible force, quietly rippled out and swept across the area. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of explosions rang out incessantly, and a violent power continued to spread out, shaking the entire space. Below, Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the others were shocked when they saw this. It was the first time that they'd witnessed a single person fighting over 10,000 saints, and there was no lack of heavenly saints amongst them. They felt their blood boiling, and their emotions were aroused. If not for their lack of strength, they would have charged forward directly. Elder Bai is too strong. I've decided that Elder Bai will be my goal in the future. He's my idol. I must learn from him. Peng Tianyu and the others clenched their fists, and their faces flushed with excitement. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, another milky white light bloomed in the sky. The strong force was like a hurricane, and it suddenly sent the people who were besieging Flawless White flying. Puff, puff. In an instant, the sound of blood spurting out could be heard. In the sky, it was as if it was raining blood, and it was filled with a demonic and bloody aura. It was extremely strange. Baidu Searchdong 81 Chinese Network. No advertising message. Chapter 628. Drip, drip. Along with the crisp sound, blood rained down and dyed the entire sea of sand red. The thick stench of blood permeated the air and surrounded everyone. Even though Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the others were used to killing, they could not help but close their eyes when they saw this scene. Flawless White stood proudly in the air. His white clothes had long been dyed red, and he looked extremely demonic. Coupled with his handsome face and devilishly charming smile, he looked like an evil god. What is this guy's strength? His strength seems to have surpassed that of a heavenly saint. The people of abysmal heavens looked at Lin Yi in horror. Even the heavenly saints were filled with fear. He was too strong, and they could not summon any desire to resist. Flawless White stared at the crowd and said indifferently, "Those who dare to attack me, Sibu Gakuin, must be prepared to die. Devil, devil, this guy is definitely a devil." Hearing this, the people of abysmal heavens and Sunset City were all terrified. Shut up. The heavenly saints' faces darkened as they shouted coldly. Set up the formation. Everyone, set up the formation. As soon as they finished speaking, the dozens of heavenly saints led close to 10,000 saints to set up dozens of formations. At the same time, Pavilion Leader Chun of Sky Treasure Pavilion also set up the 3 kills formation. Buzz! The 3 kills formation trembled, and 3 formation flags suddenly flew up. The formation flags fluttered and turned into a sharp blade, a long saber, and a sickle. In the next moment, a piercing killing intent exploded and enveloped Flawless White. Killing formation, rise. Almost at the same time, the dozens of saints also set up dozens of formations. Violent energy like dozens of wheels, mixed with biting cold attacks, rushed toward Flawless White. Elder, be careful. Seeing this, Lin Yi and the others could not help but exclaim. Each of these formations had the power to contend with a heavenly saint expert, let alone dozens of formations. Coupled with the 3 kills formation, it could be said that they were filled with killing intent. Bang, bang, bang. Loud explosions rang out continuously, and shockwaves rippled out from the formation one after another. Lin Yi, Peng Tianyu, and Cheng Yang looked at the formation with worry. Boom, boom. The formation continued to operate, and as time passed, the violent energy became more and more piercing cold. It was filled with a destructive aura. The shockwaves continued to spread, and the destructive power forced Lin Yi, Peng Tianyu, and the others to retreat. That was an attack from a heavenly saint. With their strength, they could not withstand it at all. Those from the 9 Nether Heaven realm and Sunset City wouldn't have been able to resist it if they hadn't been hiding in the formation. As they felt that astonishing power, Lin Yi and the rest finally began to feel nervous. A quarter of an hour, half an hour had passed. The violent energy did not weaken at all. Instead, a destructive aura rippled out, filling the entire space. Lin Yi and the others had been forced to retreat more than 100 feet away. They could only watch flawless white in the formation from afar. Damn it, there are too many formations. Elder, by strength alone, seems to be unable to deal with them. Seeing this scene, Lin Yi couldn't help but regret. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have allowed Li Moyun to deal with those forces. If he had allowed Li Moyun to come along, needless to say, at least they wouldn't be in danger right now. However, at this moment, no matter how worried they were, there was nothing they could do. Under the suppression of the dozens of formations and the 3 kills formation, Flawless White's aura was getting weaker and weaker. Ha ha ha! This guy can't hold on any longer. Everyone, let's work harder. Sensing that Flawless White's aura was starting to weaken, the Heavenly Saint experts were overjoyed. However, before they could work harder, a strange energy rippled out from Flawless White's body. Devour the world. A strange pulling force was suddenly felt. Almost instantly, the thousands of saints were pulled out of the array without any resistance. Poochie, poochie. Crisp sounds rang out continuously. After the saints were pulled out of the formation, they were almost instantly torn to pieces by the violent energy. Oh no! Seeing this, the Heavenly Saint experts' faces changed drastically. After thousands of saints died, they could clearly sense that the power of the formation was rapidly weakening. Ha ha ha! Break! Flawless White roared and took a deep breath. In the next moment, the violent energy in the air condensed into a ray of light like a river flowing backward. It was directly sucked into Flawless White's mouth. Huff! 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 Along with the movement of his throat, the energy did not cause any harm to Flawless White. Instead, it entered his stomach. In an instant, Flawless White's aura, which was originally weak, became strong again. What's going on? Impossible. How could he devour all the energy? He seems to have replenished all the energy that he consumed earlier. In an instant, the Heavenly Saint experts' eyes were filled with fear as they looked at Flawless White. This was the first time they had seen someone who could recover his saint power by devouring the violent energy of the formation. Burp. After a while, Flawless White had swallowed all the formations into his mouth. He burped comfortably with a satisfied look on his face. In the air, except for the formation flag of the 3 kills formation, the rest of the formations had already collapsed. Apart from the people of the Great Sage Realm who were still alive, the rest of the saints had already been killed by the backlash of the formation's power. The survivors could not help but feel a chill run down their spines, as if they were in an ice cellar. They were extremely terrified. In their eyes, Flawless White was like a devil from hell. Hee hee, it's too easy for you to deal with me. Today, I, Flawless White, will let you know the consequences of provoking Cebu Gakuin. The corners of Flawless White's mouth curled up. His expression was piercingly cold as he walked step by step toward the survivors. Oh no! The faces of the dozens of heavenly saints changed drastically. They hurriedly shouted, "Everyone, use your blood to activate the 3 kills formation. If you hold back any longer, I'm afraid we'll all die." Ha ha ha. Flawless White laughed out loud. "Even if you use your blood, you're no match for me. Just surrender obediently." Amidst the laughter, the heavenly saints' faces turned pale as they spat out their blood. Puff, puff. Streams of blood were spat out and poured onto the 3 kills formation flag. Buzz. In an instant, blood-red light slowly drifted out from the formation flag, and a strong smell of blood assailed their nostrils. A strange invisible wave quietly spread out. Genius memorized this site's address in a second. Human mobile version reading website, M. Chapter 629. Several thousand people sprayed their blood. A thick smell of blood pervaded the entire space. Strange undulations quietly rippled out from within the array flags. N. The Flawless White, who was bathed in blood, raised his head and shot a glance at the array flags. His expression finally became solemn. He could feel that there was a power that made his heart palpitate inside the 3 Carnage formation. 3 Carnage formation, kill. Stream after stream of fresh blood bloomed. The 3 Carnage formation was dyed red. The strange power rippled more and more. The blood-red light looked especially horrifying. Buzz. The blood-red light surged and suddenly enveloped Flawless White's entire person. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A crimson light pillar suddenly rushed out from within the 3 Carnage formation, sweeping across the horizon, bringing along a crisp sound of tearing through the air. The intense power caused the space to tremble. Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the rest continuously retreated. Looking at that blood-red light pillar, their expressions were especially solemn. Inside that light pillar contained an intense power of blood qi, and also mixed with a corrosive power. If touched, even a heavenly sage realm powerhouse would find it very hard to resist. This power, I wonder if Elderby can withstand it. Hiss, the power condensed from the power of blood qi of close to 10,000 people, is too strong. Peng Tianyu and the rest were horrified, swallowing their saliva constantly. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly, a crisp sound sounded out. Under the horrified gazes of Peng Tianyu and the rest, several more light pillars emerged from within the 3 Carnage formation. Thick power of blood qi twined around the light pillars, constantly sweeping across the sky, crashing towards Flawless White. Peng Tianyu and the rest suddenly felt a chill in their hearts, incomparably worried. Not good. In Lin Ye's mind, Biluo suddenly shouted out, scaring Lin Yi until his expression changed slightly. The 3 Carnage formation has been completely activated by the power of blood qi. Completely activated. Flawless White might be in trouble. Biluo's voice was grave. Lin Ye's heart trembled, and he hurriedly asked, "Is there any way to break the 3 killing formation?" "Yes," Biluo sighed and said, "but that method is a little harmful to you." "Hiss, if Elderby is defeated, I won't be able to escape either." Lin Yi asked in a deep voice, "What method?" "Gather all the divine sense in your body and detonate it. Be it the 3,000 heavenly Daos or the heavenly God Guide, both have the ability to restrain evil energy," said Biluo in a stern voice. "The divine sense you've cultivated is a combination of several types of power, and it's even more terrifying when it comes to restraining blood qi and the like. However, after detonating your divine sense, your strength will fall into a long period of weakness. You can only use your saint energy and not your divine sense." "All right." The corner of his mouth twitched, but Lin Yi still decided to help Flawless White. At this moment, they were grasshoppers on the same rope. If Flawless White was defeated, they couldn't escape either. On the contrary, if they won with Flawless White, Lin Yi could live well without any power during this period. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi immediately gathered his divine sense according to Biluo's guidance. Boom, 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 hum. strong power constantly exploded from afar, shaking the space. The sea of sand was penetrated, and black holes appeared one after another. Peng Tianyu and the others trembled with fear as they watched. A moment later, they were surprised to find that Lin Yi, who had been standing beside them, was emitting divine sense power. It contained a holy aura, which caused their minds to tremble. "This is Brother Lin. What is he doing?" Seeing this, Peng Tianyu and the others were stunned. At the same time, a thought appeared in their minds. Was Lin Yi going to intervene in the battle between Flawless White and the others? They shook their heads violently. As soon as this thought appeared, they suppressed it. They knew Lin Yi's strength. Although he was strong, he definitely hadn't reached the Heavenly Saint realm. Even if he was in the middle stage of the Great Sage realm, he could bring great pressure to him. Just as Peng Tianyu and the others were astonished, all of the divine sense in Lin Yi's body had already condensed into a ball that flickered with a silvery white light. At this moment, Lin Yi was weak and powerless. In his body, even in his mind, there was no divine sense at all. "Biluo, do it!" Gritting his teeth, Lin Yi no longer hesitated and immediately ordered Biluo to attack. Swoosh! Under Biluo's control, the silver-white ball suddenly flew out at an extremely fast speed and collided with the Three Kills formation. However, other than Lin Yi, no one else could see the sphere. Peng Tianyu and the others only saw Lin Yi's body go limp, and a whistling wind blew beside him. In the next moment, an indescribable power filled the entire world. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The blood-red light pillars in the air kept sweeping. The destructive power, mixed with the power of blood chi, pierced through the space and exploded into pieces of nothingness. However, when the silver-white ball of light collided with the blood-red light pillars, the light pillars were like snow meeting the scorching sun. There was no resistance, and they quickly dissipated. In just a few breaths' time, one of the light pillars was completely destroyed. "What's going on?" One of the light pillars disappeared. "Haha, Eldabai is mighty." Peng Tianyu and the others were ecstatic. They thought that Flawless White had exploded with power. Shen Qingyun was the only one who turned her gaze to Lin Yi, her eyes shining brightly. Phew! Seeing that the power condensed from the power of divine thought was effective against the Three Kills formation, Lin Yi let out a long sigh of relief. His heart relaxed, but his body went limp, and he almost fell to the ground. "Ah!" Shen Qingyun exclaimed and quickly supported Lin Yi. When their hands touched, Shen Qingyun was surprised. "Junior brother Lin, why is the power in your body gone?" Shen Qingyun looked at Lin Yi in surprise. She was even more certain that the sudden disappearance of the light pillars must have been caused by Lin Yi. Hearing Shen Qingyun's words, Peng Tianyu and the others turned around and were surprised. "It's nothing." Cough, cough. Lin Yi coughed softly and shook his head. His eyes were still fixed on the light pillars. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The ball formed by the power of divine thought was unhindered, and it kept rushing toward the light pillars. At the same time, the light pillars disappeared one after another. Seeing this, Peng Tianyu and the others were stunned. Boom! Suddenly, a muffled voice sounded. Inside the formation, the people from a nine nether heaven sensed that something was wrong and immediately came up with a countermeasure. Swoosh! In the next moment, the smell of blood became more intense. More than 10 light pillars rushed toward Flawless White, who was trapped by the formation. However, before the light pillars could fall, the silver ball had already collided with them and completely annihilated them. Damn it, what's going on? The power of the Three Kills formation is weakening. What's going on? Who's in the dark? Sneaky, get out of here. The piercing shout was like a sudden clap of thunder, reverberating in the entire space. Baidu Search 81 Chinese Network O. No advertising message. Chapter 630. The piercing voice was like a clap of thunder, reverberating in the air and causing the space to ripple. However, no one responded. For a moment, everyone from the abysmal heavens looked around, their faces full of fear. Buzz, buzz. The silver-white ball of light, under Billy-Uo's control, came to the side of the triple kill formation without any hindrance. Rumble. In the next moment, the power of the divine thought exploded and collided with the triple kill formation. Boom, boom, boom. In front of everyone from the abysmal heavens, all the power in the triple kill formation surged and exploded like a bomb. Bright and dazzling light bloomed, piercing everyone's eyes and causing them to close their eyes quickly. Surging shock waves swept out and wreaked havoc, causing the entire space to explode. For a moment, the space was completely turned into nothingness. Fortunately, Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the rest were relatively far away and were not affected. However, when they saw the space in front of them shatter and turn into nothingness, everyone's face was filled with horror. It was too terrifying. The power of the triple kill formation is so terrifying. Hiss! I wonder if Elderbai is safe? Peng Tianyu and the rest did not dare to breathe loudly as they stared at the nothingness in front of them. Lin Yu was also extremely nervous and kept asking Biluo in his heart. As time passed, the area of nothingness gradually recovered. The white fog dissipated, revealing the scene inside. The originally boundless sea of sand was now left with white fog and nothingness. Not to mention a human figure. There was not even a ghost figure. Cough, cough. Suddenly, there was a slight cough, and a figure slowly crawled out of the broken black hole. Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the rest quickly turned around. When they saw who it was, their faces immediately darkened. The person who crawled out was Pavilion Leader Chun of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. However, at this time, his clothes were torn and blood was flowing out. His aura was extremely weak. Any random, say, would be able to kill him. Damn it, why isn't he dead yet? Lin Yi and the others felt a chill in their hearts. Just as they were about to attack, Pavilion Master Chun sensed their presence. His expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly crushed something. The next moment, his figure dashed out like a bolt of lightning. That kind of speed was extremely fast. Lin Yi and the others opened their mouths, but didn't dare to continue chasing. They tentatively walked towards that empty space. Elderbai, where are you? To Lin Yi and the others, finding flawless white was the most important thing. Buzz! A silver-white radiance bloomed, and the space burst open. A figure stepped out from it. Lin Yi and the others turned their heads to look and immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The person who appeared before them was flawless white. His entire body was covered in blood, and his face was filled with exhaustion. Just now, the 3 kills formation had been detonated by the power of divine thought. That kind of power was earth-shattering, and even he didn't dare to resist it. He hurriedly opened up a small space to avoid the crisis. I was reckless this time. I didn't expect the 3 kills formation to be so powerful. Flawless White sighed, but he started to size up Lin Yi and the others. When he noticed Lin Ye's abnormality, the look in his eyes suddenly became strange. Just now, before the explosion, he felt the power of divine thought and thought that someone had helped him. Although the power of divine thought was a little familiar, he didn't think much of it. But now, when he felt that Lin Ye's divine thought had completely dissipated, he realized that the person who had helped him was Lin Yi. This made Flawless White extremely surprised. He couldn't figure out why Lin Ye's divine thought was so powerful that it could detonate the 3 kills formation and restrain the power of blood chi. However, Flawless White didn't ask and just stared silently at Lin Yi. Elderbai, it's good that you're fine. Oh right, Elderbai, the pavilion master of the Sky Treasure Pavilion, escaped just now. Peng Tianyu and the others heaved a sigh of relief and felt much more at ease. It's okay. Flawless White chuckled and said, later, we'll go back to Sunset City and destroy the entire Sky Treasure Pavilion. Now, let's get rid of the fish that escaped the net first. At this point, Flawless White's lips curled up. He waved his right hand, and a silver-white light shot up into the sky and swept across the entire space. Bang, bang, bang. Crisp sounds were heard, and more than 10 figures were sent flying by the silver-white light. They floated in the air, covered in blood, and their auras were weak. Don't kill me. I'm the guardian of Jiuyo Dragon School. You can't kill me. Seeing that their concealment had been discovered by Wuxia, the few heavenly saint experts also panicked and hurriedly begged for mercy. Ha ha ha. Flawless White laughed out loud and looked at the guardian of Jiuyo Dragon School. His eyes were full of mockery. I'll borrow your words from before. You're just a guardian. Why would Jiuyo Dragon School help you when you're about to be killed in the Sky Wave True region? As soon as he finished speaking, Flawless White didn't give the Sky Saints any chance to retaliate. He formed a hand seal with both hands, and a huge shadow of his index finger descended from the sky. The surging power instantly crushed the dozen Sky Saints. No! As they screamed in horror, the dozen Sky Saints were completely scared out of their wits. Cough, cough. After getting rid of those Sky Saints, Flawless White coughed a few times and his face turned pale. It was obvious that after a series of battles, killing more than 10 Sky Saints in one go had taken a toll on him. Phew! After letting out a long sigh, Flawless White lifted Lin Yi and the others and flew back to Sunset City. Flawless White's voice suddenly rang in Lin Yi's ears. Secret telepathy. Flawless White knew that Lin Yi had many secrets. Naturally, you wouldn't let the others know about them. Little guy, thank you so much this time. I originally wanted you to owe me 400 million Saint Stones, but it seems like I owe you now. Flawless White's voice was filled with helplessness. The corner of Lin Yi's mouth twitched. He looked at Flawless White's eyes with a strange expression and couldn't help but curse in his heart. Profiteer, TSK, little guy, the first 100 million Saint Stones were privately sponsored by me, but the last 400 million was to help you rope in others. Shouldn't you bear the burden of that money? Flawless White's voice was full of ridicule. I didn't expect that you would be the one to help me in the end. Since that's the case, you don't have to return the 400 million Saint Stones. Then I'll have to thank Elder. Lin Yi couldn't help but roll his eyes. This time, his divine will had collapsed, and it would take at least 2 to 3 months to recover. It could be said that Lin Yi's strength had dropped by more than a few levels. Even an invincible saint could exert great pressure on Lin Yi now. After all, his martial realm was still too weak. He was only a mid-stage saint. It was already very strong to be able to fight against an invincible saint. Little guy, don't worry. If you need any herbs for your injuries, just let me know. That's great. I want herbs to recover my soul. The more, the better. Genius memorized this site's address in a second. Human mobile version reading website, M. Chapter 631. Sunset City. After 3 days of fighting, the chaotic Sunset City finally calmed down. Fresh blood splattered in every corner of Sunset City. 3 days ago, under the leadership of Yutiani, Li Maoyun, and a few others, the Yu clan attacked the other factions. Most of the elites of those factions had followed the clan leader to the auction. How could they resist? As a result, they were killed one after another. Blood splattered all over the sky. While the various factions were in chaos, the ordinary people in Sunset City were also in chaos. Everyone fell into a frenzy of killing. Only when almost everyone was dead did the massacre come to an end. Of the hundreds of thousands of people in Sunset City, less than 10,000 survived. Some took the opportunity to build their own factions. They had a feeling that a new era was coming. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The wind howled. A figure flew through the air and stopped in the sky above Sunset City. Hiss. What's going on? Where's the Sky Treasure Pavilion? Where's my Sky Treasure Pavilion? That figure lowered his head to look, but his heart was filled with shock, and he roared endlessly. In a fit of panic, the figure trembled. He could no longer suppress his injuries and spat out blood. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At the same time, a dozen figures flew into the air and surrounded him. Who dares to be so presumptuous? Amidst the soft roars, those figures held sharp blades in their hands as they pointed at that figure. On their bodies were the insignia of the Yu clan. The Yu clan. The figure frowned and couldn't help but roar. Bastard, what is your Yu family trying to do? How dare you attack us while we're at the auction? Are you not afraid that the Jiyo Dragon School will attack you? His furious roar was like a sudden clap of thunder as it spread out. Suddenly, a few more figures appeared. It was Li Maoyun and Yu Qianni. Yu Qianni sized up the figure and sneered. I was wondering who it was. So, it's the Pavilion Master of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. It's just that you seem to be in a miserable state right now. You. Pavilion Master Qin trembled. He glared at Yu Qianni and shouted, Is the Yu clan really going to break the rules? Sorry? What rules? Yu Qianni shrugged and said helplessly, This is the true heavenly domain. What does the rules of Jiyo Dragon School have to do with me? Ha ha! Li Maoyun, who was standing at the side, laughed out loud. Interesting. You're actually using the Nine-Nethered Demon Dragon sect to suppress people in my Sacred Martial Academy's territory. I really don't know what's in your head. What? Hearing this, Pavilion Master Qin's pupils constricted. His expression stiffened as he stood rooted to the ground. He finally understood why the Yu clan had changed so much during this period of time. He finally understood why they had lost so miserably this time. Originally, they had planned to occupy Luori City without alerting Cebu Gakuen. Then, they would slowly invade Cebu Gakuen. However, the result was that Cebu Gakuen had already set up an inescapable net. This time, they were defeated very miserably. Everyone was dead. They could not even send a message back. Luori City had completely fallen into the hands of Cebu Gakuen. From today onwards, all the factions in Luori City would respect Cebu Gakuen. So, Cebu Gakuen had already set up an inescapable net. Cough cough. Pavilion Master Chun smiled bitterly. It was a good loss. Since that's the case, then die. Yu Qianni shouted. In a flash, his entire body was like a sharp sword that pierced through Pavilion Master Chen's body. Drip! Pavilion Master Chen's body trembled. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. In the next moment, flames ignited on his body. With a crackling sound, he turned into a pile of dust. At this point, all the factions in Luori City had fallen. Phew, he escaped. Why aren't Elder Bai and the rest back yet? Li Maoyun yawned and looked into the distance. His eyes were filled with curiosity. Perhaps there are still things to take care of. Yu Qianni retracted his hand and smiled at Li Maoyun. This time, thank you for your help, Elder Li. It's no problem, Li Maoyun said indifferently. Since it's that little guy's request, I will naturally help. Luori City is now in your hands. If anything happens to Luori City, Don't worry, Elder Li. Yu Qianni's heart trembled. He hurriedly cupped his fists and said seriously, The Yu family will definitely control Luori City. It's impossible for the factions from other regions to infiltrate. That's good. Li Maoyun yawned and turned to leave. Although he had helped the Yu family, it did not mean that he trusted them. Sometimes, it was necessary to give them a warning. If they were too arrogant, there would definitely be problems. Seeing Li Maoyun leave, Yu Qianni breathed a sigh of relief and wiped away the sweat on his forehead. Although he was at the invincible Great Sage realm, when he faced Li Maoyun, he felt extremely suppressed. It was as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him. He did not dare to be presumptuous. Phew! Cebu Gakuen is really too scary. Any random elder has this kind of strength, this kind of realm. Looks like I have to take care of my subordinates in the future. Taking a deep breath, Yu Qianni had already made up his mind. In the future, he would cling tightly to Cebu Gakuen. After a while, Luori City quieted down again. Those who were lucky enough to survive, however, were frantically working. Yu family main hall. Dozens of figures stood in a forest. Lin Yi sat at the head of the table, sizing everyone up. Flawless White, Li Maoyun, Yu Qianni, and the others were not in the hall. There were only the Yu family, Xue Feng, Shi Wei, and the others. Shen Xingyan stood beside Lin Yi, taking care of him. As for Peng Tianyu and the others, they were waiting outside. Ahem! Sizing everyone up, Lin Yi said in a low voice, "You have all done well in this mission. From now on, the Yu family will be the dominant force in Luori City. This way, I can leave with peace of mind." "Brother Lin, you're leaving already?" Hearing this, Yu Menglin pursed her lips, looking at Lin Yi with eyes full of reluctance. "Yes." Lin Yi smiled. "When I first came to the Yu family, it was to help you solve the Yu family's crisis. Now that the Yu family is the strongest force in Luori City, what's the point of me staying? Phew, also, I hope you can do me a favor." "What favor?" Yu Menglin's eyes were fixed on Lin Yi. Yu Hongrui and the others clasped their fists and said, "Please don't worry, Master Lin. The Yu family will never forget your great kindness. Not to mention one favor. Even if it's 1,000 or 10,000 favors, we'll still do them." "Ah, that's not necessary." Lin Yi pointed at Shui Feng and Shiwei. "These two are my brothers. In the future, I will have to trouble you to take care of them in Luori City." Chapter 632. Ha ha ha, Sir Lin. It's all thanks to the help of these two brothers that we were able to massacre Sunset City this time. You don't have to say it. We won't mistreat them. Yu Hongrui laughed out loud. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi gave a few more instructions, then left with Shui Feng and Shiwei. When Lin Yi left, Yu Menglin's eyes were misty with tears. She bit her lip, but still couldn't make up her mind. Yu Hongrui and the other sighed and patted Yu Menglin's shoulder. By now, they all knew of Lin Yi's identity and naturally understood Yu Menglin's misgivings. If Lin Yi had feelings for Yu Menglin, then so be it. But now, Lin Yi clearly didn't love Yu Menglin. With such a large difference in status, they weren't foolish enough to advise Yu Menglin to act rashly. Rather than helping each other in times of need, it was better to forget each other. After leaving the Yu family, Lin Yi rushed to their stronghold under Shiwei's lead. After conquering Sunset City, the first thing Shiwei and the others did was choose a stronghold. After dismissing all the outsiders, only Shiwei, Shui Feng, and Shun Xinyan were left in the room. Shui Feng, Shiwei, the intelligence network of Sunset City depends on the two of you. Lin Yi said indifferently. When a network of Sunset City is complete, then spread out. If you can infiltrate Tartarus Heaven, that would be even better. Hearing this, Shiwei raised an eyebrow, his heart filled with suspicion. Shui Feng directly agreed. Also, I will arrange for a few people tomorrow. You must take good care of their cultivation. Lin Yi suddenly thought of Luo, Bingyue, and the others, and hurriedly instructed. Now, Sunset City was completely under the control of the Yu family. Shiwei and the others were not weak, and had a lot of authority. With them taking care of Luo, Bingyue, and the other girls, Lin Yi was quite relieved. If he didn't release Luo, Bingyue, and the others, they would soon die of old age in the ninefold space. After giving these instructions, Lin Yi immediately let Shui Feng and the other two leave. However, after Shui Feng and Shiwei left, Shun Xinyan was unwilling to leave. Senior Sister Shun, why do you keep following me? Seeing that Shun Xinyan was unwilling to leave, Lin Yi could not help but feel helpless. Oof. Shun Xinyan snorted and said, "You're seriously injured now. I have to protect you. This is my territory." Lin Yi smiled bitterly. "I still need to cultivate for a while. How am I supposed to cultivate with you watching me? Live and cultivate." Shun Xinyan rolled her eyes at Lin Yi. The corner of Lin Yi's mouth twitched. Just as he was about to speak, Shun Xinyan stuck out her tongue, then got up and left. Before leaving, Shun Xinyan carefully sized up Lin Yi again. She was only relieved after making sure that he was fine. Sensing this, Lin Yi could not help but exhale a turbid breath. Ever since he bought the nameless saber for Shun Xinyan's care of him was a little special, which made him very vexed. There were some secrets that couldn't be revealed. Forget it. I can get rid of her when I return to the outer court. Letting out a sigh, Lin Yi entered the ninefold space with a thought. This time, Lin Yi's expression changed dramatically. In the ninefold space, the originally vast origin heavenly water had shrunk by a lot. The chaotic divine tree had also withered, and the rich chi of heaven and earth was extremely thin. Biluo sat on a leaf of the chaotic divine tree, her face pale. In her arms, the egg appeared dispirited and motionless. "What's going on?" Seeing this, Linyi was stunned and hurriedly asked, "My divine sense has collapsed." "Naturally, this is what happened," Biluo said weakly. "Hurry up and find some herbs to recover some strength. If this continues, the origin heavenly water will dry up, the chaotic divine tree will wither, and I may die." "Hiss! The consequences are so serious?" Frowning slightly, Lin Ye's heart suddenly became anxious. No wonder he could not contact Biluo no matter how hard he tried. It turned out that the ninefold space had changed. "Also, hurry up and take them out. Otherwise, they will die," Biluo said helplessly. "If you can't recover your divine sense within a month, we will all be finished." With that, Biluo turned into a ray of green light, enveloping the egg and the chaotic divine tree. Obviously, Biluo was using her own strength to help Linyi. Linyi was touched. Not daring to delay any longer, he hurriedly found Luo Bingyue and the other girls, and with a wave of his right hand, teleported them out. After doing all this, Linyi glanced at the deteriorating ninefold space again before leaving. As soon as Linyi opened his eyes, he sensed that Luo Bingyue and the other girls were slowly waking up. Boom! 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 In an instant, heavy saint aura rippled. After such a long period of cultivation, Luo Bingyue had already broken through to the mid-stage saint realm. Her domain power had also reached the realm of the shackles, which was shocking. As for Luo Xing, Ling Shi, and Luo Ling they had not broken through to the saint realm. They were only 7th tribulation and 8th tribulation half-true saints. Their domains had only comprehended slightly more than 60,000 strands of power. With this kind of strength, they could only be considered weak in the heavenly wave true domain. Fortunately, the setting sun city had just been cleaned up, and most of the survivors were in the saint realm and half-true saint realm. Coupled with Shi Wei and Xue Feng's care, Luo Bingyue and the other girls were still able to survive. While Linyi was deep in thought, the 4 girls, Luo Bingyue and Luo Xing woke up. As soon as they opened their eyes and saw Linyi, they were ecstatic. They did not even care about the increase in their strength. "Brother-in-law, this is great. I can finally see you." As usual, Luo Xing threw herself into Lin Ye's arms without any hesitation. Lin Yi rubbed Luo Xing's head dotingly and said softly, "This is the heavenly wave, true domain. You'll be cultivating here." "This is the heavenly wave, true domain." Hearing this, Luo Bingyu, Luo Ling and Luo Bing felt it and were shocked. What rich saint chi! As something's not right. My cultivation realm? How did I break through to the 8th tribulation half-true saint realm? At this time, the 3 girls finally realized that something was wrong, especially Luo Bingyue. She looked at her own palm in shock. Amidst the shock, the memories of cultivation gradually awakened, and they calmed down. They had been cultivating in the 9 heavenly layers space, and their memories were blurry. Luo Xing's memories were awakened, and she hugged Lin Ye's arm even tighter. She sighed and said, "Brother-in-law, that kind of cultivation is too boring. Can you take me to the heavenly wave true domain in the future?" "No." Lin Yi shook his head and said helplessly, "I have to go back to Cebu Gakuin. Phew, this is the setting sun city, which is equivalent to my territory. Xue Feng and the others are here, so you can cultivate here in peace. After I come out of Cebu Gakuin, we will go to other places." Hearing this, Luo Xing was depressed. Chapter 633. Brother-in-law. Luo Xing shook Lin Ye's arm and looked at him pitifully. "Okay, Xing don't make trouble," Luo Bingyue suddenly said. In an instant, Luo Xing pouted and didn't dare to say anything more. "What is the strength of the people around here?" Luo Bingyue asked directly, hitting the nail on the head. Oh, don't worry, Lin Yi said with a smile. With your strength, you can definitely survive here. As for the speed of your cultivation in the future, it depends on your efforts. After pondering for a moment, Lin Yi simply took out some of the sacred medicines that he had auctioned and distributed them to the three women. The three women didn't stand on ceremony with Lin Yi and accepted them all. After explaining some cultivation problems to the women, Lin Yi took the four women out, found Xue Feng and Shi Wei, and asked them to make arrangements for the four women. Seeing this scene, Shi Wei looked at Lin Yi with admiration. Not long after, Shun Qingyun suddenly returned. She was originally full of joy, but after seeing Luo Bingyue and the other three women, her expression turned cold. Senior Sister Shun, what happened? Noticing Shun Qingyun's abnormality, Lin Yi thought something had happened and quickly asked. However, Shun Qingyun didn't answer him, but looked at Luo Bingyue and the other three women. At the same time, Luo Bingyue and the other three women also looked at Shun Qingyun. This was especially true for Luo Xing, whose eyes were filled with repulsion as she looked at Shun Qingyun. Brother-in-law, who is this guy? Luo Xing, rolled her eyes, suddenly stepped forward, and hugged Lin Ye's arm with a smile. Hearing this, Shun Qingyun raised her eyebrows, but was stunned in place. Brother-in-law? Could it be that Lin Yi was already married? Be polite. Lin Yi knocked on Luo Xing's head and chuckled. Let me introduce you to my senior sister, Shun Qingyun, Cebu Gakuan inner yard disciple, invincible in the great sage realm, with strength comparable to the great sage late stage. Hiss! As soon as her voice fell, Luo Bingyue and the other two girls suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. They looked at Shun Qingyun with eyes full of horror. Only Luo Xing curled her lips and didn't care too much. Sensing the girl's shock, Shun Qingyun frowned slightly and just stared at Lin Yi. Immediately, Lin Yi introduced Luo Bingyue and the other two girls to Shun Qingyun. Hearing this, Shun Qingyun glanced at Lin Yi strangely and suddenly asked, "You brought your wives from the mortal world?" After saying this, Shun Qingyun didn't wait for Lin Ye's reply and turned to leave. She only felt that her whole body was in a daze. The corner of his mouth twitched. Lin Yi was too lazy to explain and just knocked on Luo Xing's head. Soon, Shi Wei and Xue Feng had prepared everything for Luo Bingyue and the other two girls. They heard how Luo Xing addressed Lin Yi and didn't dare to neglect. After all this, Lin Yi chatted with the four girls for a while and then left. Shun Qingyun had been waiting for him outside for a long time. When she saw Lin Yi come out, she couldn't help but ridicule. "You're amazing. You came to Cebu Gakuan to cultivate and even brought your family." "What do you mean by bringing my family?" Lin Yi smiled bitterly and said, "My brothers, my friends, I can't abandon them. Phew, since they chose to come, I will naturally prepare everything for them." "Okay, no need to say any more." Shun Qingyun shrugged and said, "The elders are still waiting for us to go back." "Okay." Nodding slightly, Lin Yi quickly followed Shun Qingyun. When they returned to the stronghold, Lin Yi suddenly realized that the originally hidden stronghold was now in the open. Although it wasn't luxurious, compared to before, it was like heaven and earth had been turned upside down. At this moment, Flawless White, Li Maoyun, and Peng Tianyu were all waiting at the entrance. "Phew, Brother Lin, you're finally here." Seeing Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun arrive, Peng Tianyu, Cheng Yang, and the others quickly greeted them, especially Cheng Yang, Liao Jingyu, and the others. Previously, they were a little disdainful of Lin Yi, but now they sincerely admired Lin Yi. "Are you leaving?" Lin Yi looked at them and couldn't help but frown. "That's right," Flawless White said in a low voice. "This time, you all completed the mission very well. All subsequent missions are canceled." Cough, cough. More importantly, now that most of the forces in Luri City have been destroyed, those small forces are now thinking of ways to curry favor with the Yu clan and your subordinates. There's no way for them to cause any trouble for you. Li Maoyun shrugged and said the truth. Blinking, Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect that his unintentional plan would allow them to complete their mission ahead of time. But this was good too. It had been 10 days since they left. If there were any subsequent missions, they would have missed out on Qingyue's invitation. The ruins of a divine, well, saint must have many treasures. Okay, mission over, let's go back. Flawless White glanced at Li Maoyun and said indifferently, "Find Elder Lu to settle the points after we return." As soon as he finished speaking, Bai Wuxiao lightly snapped his fingers. A gust of wind swept across and suddenly swept Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the others into the air. The next moment, the gust of wind rushed forward as fast as lightning towards Sibu Gakuin. Lin Yi turned around to take a look, feeling rather worried. Luo Bingwei and the other girls had just come out. He didn't have time to remind them too much and had to leave now. This made him a little worried. But Flawless White was too fast, and he couldn't go down. What's wrong? Just as Lin Yi was worried, Shen Xingyun came to Lin Ye's side and said with a smile, "You missed them already." Phew, Lin Yi sighed and said, "After all, it's their first time in the upper realm. They're still weak. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried." Shen Xingyun pursed her lips and said suddenly, "I didn't expect you to have a family so early." "Who told you that I have a family?" Lin Yi glanced at Shen Qingyun strangely. "Then why did she call you brother-in-law?" Shen Qingyun sneered. "My engagement with her sister has been canceled. She just doesn't want to change it." Lin Yi shrugged and said indifferently, "Engagement and whatnot are shackles to me. I don't want these to drag down my cultivation path." Hearing this, Shen Qingyun looked surprised. She immediately pouted and stared at Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't argue with Shen Qingyun too much. He took out some panacea to recover the soul and spirit and swallowed it directly. He was about to return to Sibu Gakuin and explore the ruins. If he couldn't recover his strength, he would be restricted everywhere. Seeing that Lin Yi was recovering from his injuries, Shen Qingyun didn't disturb him and silently retreated to the side. Time passed quietly while Lin Yi was recovering. It had to be said that Flawless White's strength was terrifyingly strong. A journey that would have taken 3 to 4 days could be completed in half a day with Flawless White and 7 people. They had just finished absorbing the first panacea and had already returned to the sky above Sibu Gakuin. Lin Yi was stunned. "Let's go down." With a light wave of his right hand, Lin Yi and the others immediately flew down. Only Shen Qingyun was carried by Flawless White and flew into the depths of the clouds. "Junior brother Lin, don't forget about the ruins." Shen Qingyun's voice slowly entered Lin Ye's ears. Chapter 634. Looking at Shen Qingyun's departing figure, Peng Tianyu and the others heaved a sigh of relief. That little brat is finally gone. All right, I heard that senior sister Shun is a demon in the inner sect. She was quite nice these few days, except for the first few days. Qingyang suddenly scratched his head and said, "If that's the case, I feel that senior sister Shun is quite cute." "Are you that stupid?" Peng Tianyu, Liao Jingyu, and the others suddenly laughed and looked at Lin Yi strangely. Hong Ling covered her mouth and laughed. Senior sister Shun is just paying attention to her image in front of someone. Paying attention to her image? Noticing Peng Tianyu and the others teasing, Lin Yi shrugged and said helplessly, "I can't tell." "All right, let's not talk about this. When are you going to look for Elder Lu to get your rewards?" "Let's go now." Peng Tianyu said in a deep voice, "We have bought many things in this auction. After we get our points, we will be in seclusion for a while." "That's right. After we are done with our seclusion, we will give you the Saint's Stones." Cheng Yang and the others thanked him again. "It's fine." Lin Yi shook his head and chuckled. He immediately rushed towards the Elixir Pavilion. When they arrived at the Elixir Pavilion, the sky was getting dark and many people were coming out of the Elixir Pavilion. The Elixir Pavilion was different from other places. At night, the people outside the Elixir Pavilion would be asked to leave, leaving only the Elixir Pavilion disciples to cultivate. "Senior brother Peng, you are here." When the Elixir Pavilion disciples saw Peng Tianyu, Cheng Yang, and the others, they quickly greeted them. Peng Tianyu and the others were the top 50 geniuses on the Transforming Saint board. Naturally, the disciples treated them with respect. "Is Elder Lu here?" Peng Tianyu and the others asked after exchanging a few pleasantries. Elder Lu is still in the secret chamber. Do you need me to inform him? The few disciples were very polite. No need. Junior brothers, please continue with your work. We have some matters to discuss with Elder Lu. We will come out after we are done. Hee, there's no rush. As they spoke, a few students directly sent Lin Yi and the others into the elixir pavilion. This made Lin Yi quite surprised. Sure enough, as long as one was strong enough, no matter where one went, it would be easy to do things. They arrived at Elder Lu's secret chamber with ease. Before Lin Yi and the others could knock on the door, the stone door opened by itself. A voice sounded out, "Come in, little fellows." Lin Yi, Peng Tianyu, and the others looked at each other and praised Elder Lu's strength before entering the stone room. Elder Lu sized them up and suddenly smiled. Elder Bai has already told me what happened. This time, your performance was very good. Little guys, everyone's points reward will be doubled. Really? Hearing this, Peng Tianyu and the others were overjoyed. The points for this mission were not low to begin with. If the points were doubled, it would be a pleasant surprise. Of course it's true. Elder Lu chuckled. Do you think we, the elders, would lie to you? Give me your hands, and I'll give you the points. As soon as he finished speaking, Peng Tianyu and the others stretched out their hands in unison. Lin Yi shook his head with a smile and also stretched out his hand. Swoosh! Elder Lu waved his right hand. In the next moment, Lin Yi felt his body warm up. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. He quickly looked up at Elder Lu, only to see Elder Lu looking at him with a smile. After being stunned for a moment, Peng Tianyu and the others were overjoyed. Oh my God, 500,000 points. Although the mission this time took a long time, it was really worth it. Hearing this, Lin Yi realized the huge amount of points and could not help but be surprised. According to Peng Tianyu and the others, the previous mission reward was about 100,000 points. A little more would be 150,000 points. However, the mission this time had a huge reward of 500,000 points, which surprised him. Hey, little guy, I know you've gained a lot this time. After receiving the points reward, hurry up and go into seclusion. Elder Lu smiled and said, after this mission, you don't have to come to me for a while. As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Lu did not chase them away. He continued to refine pills. Seeing this, Lin Yi and the others looked at each other, bowed, and left the stone room. After leaving, Peng Tianyu and the others had not yet recovered from their ecstasy. They were still excited. I didn't expect the elder to be so generous this time. 500,000 points. That's enough for me to exchange for a bottle of God-summoning pills. I can squander for a while. I don't have to think about points anymore. After the ecstasy, Peng Tianyu and the others left the elixir pavilion. They exchanged greetings with the elixir pavilion students for a while before parting ways. Lin Yi also rushed to his residence. On the way, he called out to Billy Yuo. Phew, that elder just now helped you recover some of your soul power. Billy Yuo said, her voice full of surprise. I didn't expect there to be so many experts hidden in Cebu Gakuen. Although his strength is not as strong as Flawless White, I'm afraid he's not much weaker. He's even stronger than Limoyan. Hiss, Elder Lu helped me recover my soul power? Hearing this, Lin Yu was also stunned. A warm current flowed through his heart. Obviously, after Elder Lu noticed that something was wrong with Lin Yi, he took advantage of the opportunity of giving them points to help him recover some of his soul power. Phew, with the elder's help, your sea of consciousness and the ninefold space are now much more stable. Billy Yuo sighed softly. The chaotic divine tree and origin source, heavenly water, are also beginning to recover. However, you still have to find some herbs to recover your soul power as soon as possible. Originally, the herbs that I got from the auction were enough for me to recover a lot of my soul power. Now, it seems that if I refine all of them, it'll be a problem whether you can recover your soul power. The ruins that we're going to this time were left behind by the divine, heavenly saint. I reckon we'll get many treasures related to the soul. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Slightly nodding his head, Lin Ye's heart also became anxious as he quickly rushed back to his residence. After returning to his residence, Lin Ye did not go back directly. Instead, he turned around and patted the array that covered Qing Yue's residence. Soon, the formation dissipated and the door opened. Lin Yi walked in without any hesitation. However, as soon as he stepped into the courtyard, a surging divine sense pressure came crashing over like a giant wolf. Qing Yue, stop. Sensing this, Lin Ye's face changed drastically, and he quickly retreated. However, how fast was the divine will attack? In the instant that Lin Yi retreated, the surging divine sense attack had already slammed into Lin Ye's body. Oomph. With a groan, Lin Yi felt as if his body was hit by a huge wave. He did not have any strength to resist and was directly sent flying out, slamming heavily into the wall. In an instant, Lin Yi was furious. He raised his head and stared at Qing Yue. He did not expect Qing Yue to really kill him. Chapter 635. Why didn't you retaliate? Qing Yu frowned slightly. Suddenly, her expression changed, and she exclaimed, "That's not right. Why is the divine sense in your body gone?" Cough, cough. Coughing lightly, Lin Yi got up slowly and glared at Qing Yu. "Qing Yu, you bastard. You really went all out. Luckily, my physique is strong enough. Otherwise, if an ordinary person received this attack, they would be seriously injured even if they didn't die." The corner of Qing Yu's mouth twitched as she waved her right hand. A green light floated and slowly landed on Lin Ye's body, healing his injuries. "Lin Yi, why is your divine sense gone?" Qing Yu frowned and said, "Could it be that you're worried about losing to me, so you purposely dispersed your divine sense?" As everyone knew, divine sense could only be dispersed by oneself. No one else could interfere with it. This was the terror of a divine sense saint. "How is that possible?" Lin Yi grinned and said, "When I went out for a mission and encountered danger, I could only self-destruct my divine sense." Raising her brows, Qing Yu smiled and said, "For such a dangerous mission, the reward must be very generous, right?" "It's all right. 500,000 points." Lin Yi shrugged his shoulders and was about to speak when Qing Yu leaped up to him with a swoosh. Her eyes flashed as she asked, "How many points did you say? 500,000 points?" "Hiss. If there are such missions in the future, remember to introduce them to me." Qing Yu grabbed Lin Ye's arm tightly, her big watery eyes flashing, looking rather adorable. His mouth twitching, Lin Yi was stunned. He didn't expect that Qing Yu, who had always been cold, could make such an adorable expression. The more one cultivated and lived in Cebu Gakuen, the more one felt the importance of points. Therefore, when she heard that a mission had a reward of 500,000 points, even Qing Yu couldn't stay calm. Cough, cough. "All right, I'll definitely call you next time." Lin Yi hurriedly agreed. Only then did Qing Yue let go of her hand, revealing her canine teeth, looking especially cute. Seeing this scene, Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh in his heart. A beautiful woman, no matter if she was cold or aloof, once she acted cute, her killing power was simply too great. "I'm here to ask you when we're going to explore the ruins," Lin Yi said in a deep voice. "My divine sense is damaged. Perhaps there will be a way for me to recover in the ruins." "If you haven't recovered yet, we still have to go?" Qing Yu's eyes darted around as she said softly, "This time around, other than you, the others are all outer court disciples. All of them have strength comparable to the great sage. If you can't use your spiritual sense, I'm afraid they'll look down on you." "I'm fine," Lin Yi grinned. "My strength isn't just limited to my divine sense." "All right, can I pull another person? She's also a student of the inner yard, and she's very powerful." "Oh." Qing Yu frowned slightly, feeling very unwilling. However, since Lin Yi had said so, she couldn't refuse. She could only grit her teeth and ask, "What's her realm?" "Invincible Saint realm. However, when I was on a mission with her, I once defeated a mid-stage great sage by myself." "Sure." Slightly surprised, Qing Yu gritted her teeth and said, Since you said so, then pull her over. However, you're not allowed to pull anyone else in the future. There are already many of us going to explore the ruins. If there are more people, how are we going to split the treasures? We can't possibly fight, right? With that, Qing Yu rolled her eyes. Cough, cough. Lin Yi smiled awkwardly. Don't worry. I only want things to recover my soul and divine sense in the ruins this time. I don't want anything else. All right, then I'll go and talk to them and set a time. Qing Yu hesitated for a moment and suddenly asked, Are you sure you don't want to delay it for a few days? With your current strength, I'm really worried. Don't worry. Give me a night, and I'll be able to recover some of my strength. By then, I'll have nothing to fear. Lin Yi said in a deep voice. It's best to do it as soon as possible. This time, my soul and divine sense were almost shattered. Without treasures, it'll be very difficult to completely recover. All right then. Hearing that, Qing Yu pursed her lips and said, Then you'd better hurry. By then, if they don't acknowledge you and ostracize you, I won't help you. Huh? How can they not acknowledge me? Shrugging, Lin Yi turned and left. He waved his hand and said, Let me know after you confirm the time. I'll pass the news to my friends. Okay, Qing Yu responded. However, the way she looked at Lin Yi turned strange. After Lin Yi left, Qing Yu waved her hand and closed the array. However, she muttered, Strange. If an ordinary divine sense saint self-destructs their divine sense, they won't be able to recover for eternity. Why can he recover? And why does his divine sense give me an extremely dangerous feeling even though he doesn't have any divine sense in his sea of consciousness? Returning to the courtyard, Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu were not around. Lin Yi activated the spirit-gathering array and began to recover from his injuries. Returning to the ninefold space, Lin Yi heaved a sigh of relief. The originally deathly silent scene had changed. The origin source heavenly water flowed and surrounded the chaos divine tree, blooming with radiance. On the chaos divine tree, the egg once again activated the power of laws and nestled in Biluo's arms. However, the power of laws on it was much weaker than before. Evidently, Elder Lu had helped him a lot. My previous estimation was wrong. It's best to completely recover within half a month. Biluo glanced at Lin Yi and shrugged helplessly. What? Hearing that, Lin Yi could not help but be surprised. Didn't Elder Lu help me recover some of my soul power? Why did the recovery time decrease instead? Phew, the chaos divine tree and origin source heavenly water, as well as this space, have recovered, Biluo said helplessly. However, after activating the power of laws again, the egg can't do it anymore. It has long been used to the power of laws from before. Now that it suddenly slows down, the power of laws can't keep up. It's fine for a short period of time, but after half a month, it might become useless. If it's really an auspicious beast, it definitely can't become useless. An auspicious beast is where the destiny of a continent lies. What? An auspicious beast is where the destiny of a continent lies? The corner of Lin Ye's mouth twitched. Looking at the egg, his expression suddenly changed. That's right, Biluo said in a deep voice. An auspicious beast is an auspicious sign of heaven and earth. It's also the destiny of a continent. When an auspicious beast exists, the entire continent will be much more stable. Moreover, there's a certain chance of people breaking through the shackles of the continent and ascending to a higher world. However, if something happens to the auspicious sign, the entire continent will be sealed. There might even be a calamity of heaven and earth. Baidu Search 81 Chinese Network O. No advertising message. Chapter 636. A Great Calamity? With his mouth slightly agape, Lin Yi glanced at the egg that was absorbing the power of laws with a strange expression. Should he say that he was lucky or unlucky? The auspicious sign of heaven and earth, that kind of divine beast-level existence, actually fell into his hands so easily. Unfortunately, Now that his soul and divine sense had collapsed, he could not support the chaos divine tree. If something happened to the auspicious sign because of this, then it would be over. If it is really an auspicious sign, then we must protect it well. Biluo said in a low voice, "Hurry up and recover." Okay. Linyi did not hesitate anymore. He immediately took out some holy herbs and swallowed them. For efficiency, Linyi swallowed several holy herbs at once. The holy power in his body suddenly erupted, refining the power of those herbs. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In an instant, pure power, like a spring breeze, brushed Lin Ye's body and healed his injuries. A full month had passed, and Lin Ye had finished refining all the holy herbs. Lin Ye's divine telekinesis had finally recovered a little. His divine telekinesis had recovered to the level of a first-grade divine telekinesis. Although it was still weak, he could now use the power of his divine telekinesis. Being able to use divine sense, the speed of recovery was much faster. Lin Yi used divine sense to refine those holy herbs, and the speed was more than 10 times faster than before. 10 days, half a month, 1 month. Another 1.5 months passed, and Lin Ye's divine sense recovered to about level 20. However, most of the herbs used for recovery had been used up. This made Lin Yi very puzzled. Those holy herbs were originally used to consolidate soul power and divine sense. Now that they were used to recover divine sense, they could not be of much use at all. However, if he did not use these holy herbs, it would be even more difficult for Lin Yi to recover. Opening his eyes, Lin Yi looked at Biluo, who was not far away, with a grave expression. Originally, he thought that after all the herbs were refined, he could recover to level 30 or even level 40. However, now it seemed that it would not be easy to recover to level 25. Phew, the effect of these herbs is to consolidate divine sense, not to recover. Using them to recover is too wasteful. Lin Yi sighed. If I give these herbs to you, you might be able to recover a lot of strength. But there is no choice. Biluo shrugged and suddenly said, "By the way, I've calculated that you have to restore your spirit sense to the 55th order within half a month. Otherwise, you won't have enough power to activate the 5 types of laws, and you won't be able to let the auspicious sign live." Hiss, half a month to recover to level 55. Looks like I have to get all the points. Clenching his teeth, Lin Yi immediately exited his cultivation state. At this moment, Solitary Spirit and the others had returned, and he could no longer cultivate. At the same time, he also wanted to see how many points Solitary Spirit and the others had that he could use. Just as he exited his cultivation state, Solitary Spirit and Sun Wuyu entered his room. "Captain Gongzi, you're back." Seeing Lin Yi, the 2 Silent Soul were ecstatic and quickly bowed. Lin Yi looked at the 2 and was very satisfied. Silent Soul had already broken through to 8th Tribulation Half-True Saint, and the speed of his breakthrough surprised him. Although Sun Wuyu was still a late-stage saint, his understanding of the domain had reached a new level, and he could break through the shackles at any time. Not bad. Both of you have improved a lot. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi smiled and said, "How is the Heavenly Sword sex development?" "Captain, your body?" However, Sun Wuyu did not answer Lin Yi's question. Instead, he carefully looked at Lin Yi and asked, "You seem to be injured. Are you okay?" "Oh, what happened to young master?" Hearing this, Silent Soul suddenly became nervous. "I'm fine." Lin Yi shook his head and said, "I'll recover in a few days." "Okay, don't worry." How was the Heavenly Sword sex development? Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul carefully looked at Lin Yi. Seeing that he did not seem to be joking, they were relieved and told Lin Yi everything that had happened during this period of time. It had to be said that there was strength in numbers. As time passed, more and more new students broke through to the Saint Realm, and the gap between them and the older students gradually narrowed. Due to the changes in the system this year, thousands of new students joined the Heavenly Sword sect. As a result, the Heavenly Sword sect strength became extremely strong. Except for the few forces with peak saints, The other forces did not dare to act rashly with the Heavenly Sword sect. Not only that, the Heavenly Sword sect's various rules and regulations were now very complete, which gave Lin Yi a pleasant surprise. In the beginning, they needed to spend their own points to run the Heavenly Sword sect. But now, the points were starting to accumulate. Except for Lin Yi, Qingwei, Shengwan Yunqi, Mu Yi, and Yin Shihao all benefited. A conservative estimate was that they could get about 300,000 points every month. Young Master, during this period of time, your points have already reached 600,000. Silent Soul smiled brightly. Also, the Heavenly Sword sect's operating points have already reached 10 million. His 10 million points. The corner of his mouth twitched. Lin Yi was finally surprised. But after thinking about it carefully, Lin Yi was not surprised. To one person, 10 million points was indeed a huge sum, but there were more than 6,000 people in the Heavenly Sword sect. After conversion, each person only had a few thousand points. Phew. Letting out a long sigh, Lin Yi said in a deep voice, "If possible, tell Shengwan Yunqi and the others that we, the administrators, try not to get too many points. It's best to give out the points as benefits." Brother Shangwan said the same. Silent Soul nodded. So, after discussing, we decided to give most of the extra points to the students. We will only take 5%. His 5% is so much. Lin Yi touched his nose and was quite surprised. Sure enough, there was strength in numbers. Seeing that the Heavenly Sword sect had so many operating points, Lin Yi suddenly had an idea in his mind. If he used the operating points, he might be able to exchange for enough sacred medicine to let Lin Yi recover. But if he did that, there might not be enough time, unless he could get some treasures that specialized in recovering the soul and divine sense. Give me all the points. Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi had already made up his mind to go to the Saint Depository Pavilion to see if there were any treasures that could recover the soul. If there were, he would buy it no matter how many points he had to spend. Originally, he could still wait for time to recover slowly, but the auspicious beast could not wait. Give it all to you? Silent Soul did not hesitate. He blinked his eyes and transferred all the points to Lin Yi. In a split second, Lin Yi only felt that his right hand had become much heavier. 10 million points, that was 10 million points. Hundreds of thousands of points were enough to make the students go crazy. With 10 million points on him, even if Lin Yi had been through a lot, he could not help but tremble. Baidu search Xing 81 Chinese Networko. No advertising message. Chapter 637. Phew, you guys continue. I'm going to the Hidden Saint Pavilion. Lin Yi grinned and walked towards the door. Gongzi, you need to leave at least 2 million points for me. Silent Soul quickly said, the Sky Rapier Gate needs a lot of points to operate. Lin Yi didn't want the Sky Rapier Gate to be unable to operate, so he transferred another 5 million points back. I'll use 5 million first. I'll make up for it later. As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi immediately left the room. Looking at Lin Yi's back, Sun Weiyu suddenly said, Captain's injuries aren't light, or else he wouldn't have used the Sky Rapier Gate's points. Hearing this, Solitary Spirit finally reacted. In the past, Lin Yi would rather spend point for the Sky Rapier Gate. Why would he use the points for nothing? Then wouldn't I be delaying Gongzi's recovery? Silent Soul bit his lips and wanted to chase after Lin Yi. What are you doing? Sun Weiyu grabbed Silent Soul. Silent Soul turned around and blinked. Of course I'm going to give the points to Gongzi. Captain already gave you the points. Why would you still want them? Sun Weiyu glanced at Silent Soul and shook his head. Trust Captain, he'll be able to solve this. Okay. Silent Soul sighed, and his face was filled with worry. Lin Yi had just left the courtyard when he saw Qingyu walking out. What a coincidence! Where are you going? Seeing Lin Yi, Qingyu was stunned and said in a bad mood, You're not even fully recovered yet, and you're going to run around? Cough, cough. Lin Yi grinned and said, I'm going to the Hidden Saint Pavilion. Exchange for sacred elixirs? Qingyu blinked and didn't say anything else. She only said in a low voice, The time has been set. They'll all be busy soon, so I can only postpone it to the morning of the day after tomorrow. There's still more than a day for you to recover. Thank you. Hearing this, Lin Yi felt a warm current flowing through his heart. More than a day's time was enough for him to recover a lot of his divine willpower. By then, although he wouldn't be able to fully recover, it shouldn't be too difficult for him to deal with an invincible saint. What's more, he still had his spiritual sense treasure. If he really couldn't handle it, he could just use all of his tricks. He might not be a match for those guys. In the morning of the day after tomorrow, we will meet beside the heavenly thunder realm. The place we're going is closer to the heavenly thunder realm. Also, when the person you invited arrives, they might test her. Qing Yu stared at Lin Yi. No problem. With a grin, Lin Yi made a hand gesture and ran towards the Saint Depository Pavilion. Phew! Qing Yu heaved a sigh of relief, her expression strange. On the way, Lin Yi took out a piece of paper and wrote a line of words on it. A moment later, the paper turned into golden light and suddenly floated into the distance. That piece of golden paper was given to him by Shun Xinyun to let Lin Yi pass the message. This method is not bad. Touching his nose, Lin Yi made up his mind. In the future, he must let Shun Xinyun teach him this method. After the message was passed, Lin Yi suddenly sped up and quickly arrived at the Saint Depository Pavilion. There were still many people around the Saint Depository Pavilion. When the students saw Lin Yi, they all began to talk and salute. They were extremely respectful to Lin Yi. Lin Yi responded with a smile and stepped straight into the Saint Depository Pavilion. After entering the Saint Depository Pavilion, Lin Yi didn't hesitate and went straight to the 10th floor. It was too slow to search one by one. It was purely a waste of time. Shun Daoxian stayed in the Saint Depository Pavilion all year round. Wouldn't it be more convenient to ask him directly? Furthermore, Shun Daoxuan's strength was profound and unfathomable. Although he had been conned when he changed his cultivation method, and his strength had fallen to the great sage level, he had given up everything to raise his cultivation base. This alone was enough to prove how powerful Shun Daoxuan's divine will was. Perhaps Shun Daoxian knew a faster way to restore the soul and divine sense. Stepping on the stairs to the 11th floor, Lin Ye's body was unstable and his consciousness was in a trance. What's going on? In an instant, Lin Yi was shocked. Just as he was about to retreat, he felt a violent divine sense sweeping over and suddenly wrapped him up. Swoosh! In the next moment, Lin Yi opened his eyes again and appeared on the 11th floor, lying in front of the table. Shun Daoxian was cleaning up, but Lin Yi could see that there was something strange about his expression. After a long time, Shun Daoxian said in a hoarse voice, "Little guy, why is your divine sense gone? Why is it so weak? Could it be that you're also cultivating the 3,000 heavenly Dao remnant?" Not really. Lin Yi shook his head with a wry smile and immediately explained the reason. Humph. After hearing this, Shun Daoxian snorted coldly. Why did you save him? You even exploded your divine sense. Sai, it's not easy to solve this. Ahem. Coughing awkwardly, Lin Yi knew that the feud between Shun Daoxian and Flawless White was not something he could touch. He immediately smiled and changed the topic. Elder, do you know of any way to quickly restore the divine sense? Yes, Shun Daoxian said in a deep voice. If you can get the heart of soul, you can completely restore your soul and divine sense in one night. Heart of soul? What's that? Frowning slightly, Lin Yi asked curiously. The heart of soul, one of the legendary items of heaven and earth. Shun Daoxian sighed and said, according to legend, anyone who has the heart of soul will have a terrifying soul power. Restoring the divine sense is simply a piece of cake. However, for tens of thousands of years, no one has ever gotten the heart of soul. You haven't gotten it, and you're still talking about it? Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but roll his eyes. You said you want the fastest way. Shun Daoxian shook his head and said, ordinary people who self-destruct their divine sense or use similar methods are basically crippled. They can't even cultivate again. It's already amazing that you can recover so much divine sense in such a short time. All right, your divine sense seems to be a little different from before. Why do I feel that it's a little different from the 3,000 heavenly Tao? Chen Daoxian raised his head. Although he was blind, he could feel Chen Daoxuan's gaze. Lin Ye's heart tensed up, and his expression turned serious. He did not expect Chen Daoxian to detect the abnormality in his divine sense. It had to be said that Chen Daoxuan's senses were too strong. Lin Ye's divine sense had only recovered a little, but Chen Daoxian could sense it just by sensing it. It was really shocking. Ahem, maybe it's because of the self-destruction of my divine sense. Lin Yi blinked and quickly changed the topic. Elder, is there any sacred medicine that can restore divine sense? Chapter 638. Gulp. The sound of swallowing saliva could be heard. Lin Ye's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and he was extremely flustered. Follow? Dream? Leahy did not expect Chun Daoxuan's sensing ability to be so powerful. Phew, the sacred elixirs to recover soul power are all in the 9th floor's northeast area, the 3rd to the 5th row. However, the price is also quite expensive. You have to be mentally prepared. Chen Daoxian said indifferently. Go, recover your divine sense as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be hidden dangers. Then, Elder, I will take my leave first. Lin Yi clasped his fists and did not dare to stay any longer. He quickly left the 11th floor. After Lin Yi left, Chen Daoxuan's expression gradually changed. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly, and he whispered, This little guy seems to have merged the elephant divine skill and the 3,000 heavenly ways together. One interesting little guy to be able to do this. Could it be that after self-destructing his divine sense, all the divine sense cultivation techniques that he has practiced can be merged together? If it's really possible, maybe I can merge the elephant divine skill and the 3,000 heavenly ways together. Phew, maybe I can even recover to my previous level. With this thought, the entire 11th floor was filled with divine sense fluctuations. It was like a hurricane, roaring and rolling wildly. Lin Yi did not know that the divine sense that had merged several cultivation techniques in his body had allowed Chun Daoxian to think of a crazy method. After returning to the 10th floor, Lin Ye's body went soft, and he sat directly on the ground, panting heavily. The 11th floor was completely hidden in the void. It could be said that it was formed by divine sense. Lin Ye's divine sense was not strong enough. If he entered rashly, he would naturally be suppressed. Panting heavily, Lin Yi continued to recover his strength. Wong. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the space in front of Lin Yi, and a figure slowly stepped out from it. Looking up, Lin Yi let out a long sigh of relief. The person who came was Flawless White. Looking at Lin Ye's panting appearance, Flawless White sighed and said, You really came to find him. Actually, it's useless for you to look for him. Normal people can only wait for death when their spiritual sense self-destructs. The fact that you were able to recover is already beyond my imagination. The method that Chan Daoxian gave you should be to use the sacred medicine to slowly cultivate back. As he spoke, Flawless White glanced at the stairs in the void, his eyes filled with disdain. Not bad. Lin Yi grinned and said, As for the other method he mentioned, it's useless. There are other methods? Flawless White stared blankly for a moment before smiling. Don't tell me he wants you to look for the Heart of Souls. That guy's really crazy about the Heart of Souls. Oh. Hearing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but become curious. He looked at Flawless White in confusion. From the looks of it, Chen Daoxian was in desperate need of a soul heart. Forget it. These things aren't for you to know now. Flawless White shook his head and said in a low voice, The herbs and treasures to recover the soul and spiritual sense are all in the northeast area of the 9th floor. Here are 2 million points. You can exchange them for some sacred medicine. By the way, you still have the right to exchange items for less than 10 million points. If you want to use it this time, I can recommend you to exchange it for something that can recover your spiritual power faster. Oh, what is it? Hearing this, Linya's eyes lit up as he stared at Flawless White. From the looks of it, Elderby was more reliable. But Flawless White grinned and said, that thing can only be used after you recover your spiritual sense to level 40. I have to recover to level 40 first? The corner of Lin Ye's mouth twitched. He couldn't wait to bite Flawless White to death. If he had a way to recover so quickly, why would he need sacred medicine? Ahem. Flawless White coughed awkwardly and said in a low voice, yes, although the conditions for using it are a little weird, it can allow you to recover from level 40 to around level 55. That means that with that treasure, as long as you recover to level 40, you can recover all your strength in an instant. What is it? Hearing this, Lin Ye's breathing quickened. Although the conditions for using the treasure were a little weird and useless to him, he was pleasantly surprised that he could recover to level 55 directly. In that case, he only needed to recover to level 40. Moondrip, Flawless White said in a low voice, that is a peerless sacred treasure. Not only does it have the ability to recover the soul and spiritual sense, but it also has a certain chance of receiving the Moon God's blessing. The Moon God's blessing? Linny blinked and asked curiously, what is that? Anyone who receives the Moon God's blessing will cultivate faster at night. Moreover, when there is the moon, they will be able to exert more strength. There was once someone who received the Moon God's blessing and broke through without any warning while walking at night. There was once someone who practiced a fist technique under the moonlight and received a supreme sacred artifact. In short, the Moon God's blessing is very mysterious and has many benefits. Flawless White praised. Although the Moon God's blessing is powerful, only 1 in 1,000 people who have used the Moondrip in the past tens of thousands of years have received it. I can exchange for the Moondrip? Lin Yi asked. The Moondrip costs 11 million. Since you saved my life, I will wipe out the remaining 1 million for you. Flawless White shrugged and said with a smile, however, if you do that, you will owe me a favor. Okay, I will exchange. Without any hesitation, Lin Yi immediately agreed. Only when he recovered his strength would he have the right to talk about other things. Nodding slightly, Flawless White handed a storage ring to Lin Yi and chuckled. These are some sacred herbs I collected for you. They are all used to recover the soul and divine sense. Originally, these were gifts for you. However, since you chose the Moondrip, these are the favors you owe me. This, after hesitating for a moment, Lin Yi took the storage ring and said, thank you, Elder. Lin Yi's eyes were filled with gratitude as he looked at Bai Wuxia. Lin Yi had never thought that an elder would care so much about him. As for owing a favor, it was almost a joke. How strong was Flawless White? Even Lin Yi did not have the confidence to surpass him in a short time. Although it was a favor, it was actually taking care of Lin Yi. The Moondrip will only be produced in the middle of the month. There are still 3 days until the middle of the month. Flawless White said softly, you should work hard to recover in these few days and try to use the Moondrip as soon as possible. The day after tomorrow, I will explore the ruins of a Divine Sense Firmament Saint. If I am lucky, I might be able to recover my Divine Sense to rank 40 in a few days. Lin Yi grinned and said, Elder, I will leave the Moondrip to you. You think too much. It's not that easy to recover the power of Divine Sense. Flawless White chuckled. Since you're going to explore the ruins, why don't you take the herbs and scram? Chapter 639. As Flawless White laughed and scolded him, Lin Yi exited the 10th floor and rushed to the 9th floor. Xiao Sui asterisk dream asterisk Xiao Sui asterisk. However, before Lin Yi could look for sacred herbs, Billy Yuo's voice rang out. I just took a look. The herbs Elder Bai gave you are enough for you to refine over the next few days. It's a bit of a loss to use points to exchange for sacred herbs. There were many good things in the sacred depository, but it was not worth it to exchange them for sacred herbs. Moreover, Lin Yi was going to explore the ruins in 3 days. There was no need to exchange for too many sacred herbs. That was a ruin left behind by the divine, heavenly saint. There were bound to be many treasures that could restore and strengthen one's divine sense. If Lin Yi was lucky, he might even be able to restore his divine sense to rank 40. If that happened, he could just use the moon droplet and recover most of his divine sense. Those sacred herbs would be wasted. The sacred herbs that Lin Yi needed now were different from what Biluo needed. It was better to keep the points and use them in the future. Yes, I didn't expect Elder Bai to be so generous. Lin Yi shrugged. Looks like I got those points for nothing. Not at all, Biluo said in a low voice. The ruins of the divine heavenly saint are definitely not as simple as you think. It's best to exchange these points for some divine treasures. Your divine is already weak. If you have a divine treasure with you, it'll be safer. If you only have the divine fan, it'll be difficult to protect you. If that's the case, I'll go take a look at the divine treasures. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi did not reject Biluo's suggestion. He turned around and returned to the 10th floor, heading to the area where the divine treasures were placed. The divine fan needed to reach rank 50 before it could unleash its power. Even if Lin Yi could forcibly use it after fusing with the divine fan, he would need to recover to rank 30 before he could unleash its power. Therefore, if he could obtain more treasures of the divine will, Lin Yi's improvement would be even greater. Arriving at the 10th floor, Lin Yi searched for a long time, but he did not find any supreme treasures of the divine will. Only supreme sacred artifacts were placed there. Even the area marked with divine will was filled with supreme sacred artifacts, but they could resist the power of divine will. Realizing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel depressed. What he needed was a supreme treasure of divine will, not a supreme sacred artifact that could withstand the power of divine will. After searching for a long time, Lin Yi was still unable to find any trace of the treasure of divine will. Surprised, he rolled his eyes and had no choice but to go downstairs and rush to the area where the elders of the first floor were. The Saint Depository Pavilion was extremely vast and contained many divine objects. Naturally, there were elders guarding it. When Lin Yi found the elders, they were first shocked and then shouted, "Little guy, it's you again. You didn't cause any trouble, did you?" In an instant, Lin Yi couldn't help but blush with embarrassment. During this period of time, Lin Yi could cause trouble wherever he went. He had become a celebrity among the elders. Therefore, the elders were afraid when they saw Lin Yi. They were afraid that Lin Yi would cause the Saint Depository Pavilion to collapse again. If that happened, the entire Cebu Gakuen would collapse. All the secret areas would be gone, and even the Saint Depository Pavilion would be gone. How would the other students improve their strength? Elders, I just wanted to ask why I didn't find any supreme treasures of the divine will in the Saint Depository Pavilion. Lin Yi asked curiously. Supreme treasures of the divine will? Hearing this, the elders relaxed and smiled. There aren't many divine will saints in the outer yard, so there are no supreme treasures of the divine will in the Saint Depository Pavilion. Only the Saint Depository Pavilion in the inner yard has supreme treasures of the divine will. I see. Lin Yi frowned and felt depressed. If that was the case, he wouldn't be able to rely on the supreme treasures of the divine will to protect himself. Forget it. I can only use a supreme sacred weapon that can defend against divine will. With a sigh, Lin Yi had no choice but to return to the 10th floor and begin to choose a supreme sacred weapon. If he didn't bring anything, it would be difficult for Lin Yi to defend against the traps in the divine heavenly saint relic with his current divine will power. After a long time, Lin Yi finally chose two supreme sacred weapons. One was the Heavenly Soul Jade Pendant, a middle-grade supreme sacred weapon. It could be stored in the Jade Pendant to nourish one's soul power. Moreover, the Heavenly Soul Jade Pendant could defend against most divine will power. The other was the Sky-Devouring Mirror, an upper-grade supreme sacred weapon. It could devour all forms of attacks, including divine will power and soul power. A supreme sacred weapon was much more precious than a 10,000 inscription sacred weapon. In addition, these two were special sacred weapons, so their points were very expensive. They cost Lin Yi 3 million points. If it were holy stones, he wouldn't be able to get them without tens of millions. Fortunately, Lin Yi had borrowed the points from the Sky Rapier sect. Otherwise, it would be dangerous to buy these two supreme sacred weapons. After exchanging for the supreme sacred weapons, it was already late. Lin Yi didn't dare to delay any longer and hurried back. Directly entering the ninefold space, Lin Yi didn't hesitate and began to recognize the two supreme sacred weapons as their masters. It was very difficult to recognize a supreme sacred weapon as its master. Even though Lin Yi had a lot of experience, it still took him 3 months and a lot of pain to merge the two supreme sacred weapons. Immediately after, Lin Yi began to absorb and refine the sacred medicine to restore his divine will power and soul power. At this time, Lin Yi didn't run the divine creation. Instead, he recultivated the 3,000 heavenly ways. In an instant, Lin Yi seemed to have entered a meditative state. He felt all the power and was extremely calm. His divine telekinesis grew rapidly under the stimulation of the sacred elixir. 1 month, 2 months, 5 months. In the blink of an eye, 10 months had passed. The sacred medicine in the storage ring hadn't been completely refined, but the time was almost up. Lin Yi's divine will power had recovered to level 33. Although it wasn't strong enough, he could use the Heavenly Fan. I didn't expect you to recover so quickly. Biluo sighed and said, "It feels good to have someone take care of you. The sacred medicine that the Elder gave you is very valuable." I didn't expect Elder Bai to be so enthusiastic. Lin Yi shrugged and said in a low voice, "To be precise, I didn't expect Cebu Gakuin to be like this." It's no wonder that Cebu Gakuin has always been the #1 force in the Tianlan True Domain. Just this unity is enough to make the other forces submit. Their strength is even more frightening. Biluo said in a low voice, "In the remaining time, you can study the Heavenly Soul Jade Pendant and the Heaven-Devouring Mirror. These are both supreme sacred weapons. You can activate them without using your divine will power. They are your trump cards." Lin Yi nodded slightly and didn't slack off. He put away the sacred medicine and took out the supreme sacred weapon again to study it seriously. The divine, heavenly saint relic was full of danger. The slightest mistake could put his life in danger. Lin Yi naturally wouldn't take his life lightly. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.